And welcome back to the MCG, and we go inside the Bulldogs rooms less than 20 minutes before the start of the game here against the West Coast Eagles. The tension will be running through all these boys, and assistant coaches, there's Brian Royal, and players, Leon Cameron, about to go out there. Gee, what's it like at this stage, Lee?
Well, Drew, they know they've got a second chance, I guess, the Bulldogs. But they also know a win today, 2 weeks rest into the preliminary final. So they'll be pretty keen to make sure the last 22 rounds really come to their conclusion today.
Yes, and the Bulldogs squad, a couple of changes from last week. Of course, Cook out suspended, he got 2 weeks, and Dimartina was dropped. And in come Minton, Connell and Brown.
Certainly, yeah, very good looking team. Crediork actually plays on a lot of sizes at fullback. Denton Cameron across halfback. They're launchers, they're flexible players, play on smalls or talls, so they're very flexible players. Croft will take the biggest half forward. Certainly across the midfield there, Johnson, West and Smith. Isn't that a terrific looking line? He can go missing a bit, Rowan Smith. When he gets 15 or 20 possessions, the Bulldogs are going to just about win the game because he is so penetrating with his play. Montgomery, very good marking player from medium sizer. Hudson, 54 goals. Their main goal kicker, Grantwell, champion player across centre half forward. And their full forward line, well, Collingwood's been a surprise this year. 37 goals. He's been pretty good. Darcy Liberatore probably play around the midfield, not up on that full forward line. And certainly their ruck situation, Scott Wine, he leads them from the front. He's terrific in there. West is in and out over the year. Ramiro has just had a fantastic year as a running, hard, ball-getting midfielder there. And Garlic, Minton Connell, he may start at full forward, Minton Connell, or it may be just one of those variations in his attack that Terry Wallace will employ over the game.
Yes, interesting that Simon Minton Connell has been given a go, given the chance with Cook's suspension, but he's kicked us 5 goals for the year.
Yeah, not a lot going into the full forward, is it?
No, maybe they might get away without a specialist full forward. Let's have a look at the Eagles as to how they prepare, and we go inside their rooms with Chris Lewis, plenty of experience there. There's young Ben Cousins, might be in for a tough day on
He
Libba.
might have got a bit of advice going into this game, Drew, on be prepared mentally.
Yes, but with some of the injuries that have hit the Eagles at the very worst time of the year, McKenna hasn't made the trip. Peter Matera is out with a hamstring injury. So it's not the time of the year to be losing those premiership players.
Yeah, a bit weakened going into this game from their very best team, no doubt about that.
Well, John Worsfold's the captain, and just before the game started, a little time ago, he spoke with Adrian Barrich about today's game.
The boys look quietly confident, a team on a mission, I guess.
Yeah, well, it's finals footy, it's cutthroat for us. There's no next week, Barra, so we've come over here to do the job and play as well as we can and see if we're good enough to win.
Now, Woosh, if you do win, there's a home final, obviously in Perth next week. Has that given the boys extra incentive?
I think certainly knowing that a win also gives us a home final, yeah, it's an extra incentive, but you shouldn't really need any more incentive to win other than knowing that a loss, you're out of it. So, you know, a win is crucial, but it's a bonus to be able to play at home.
And what about your finals record here in Melbourne? You haven't won a final in Melbourne since the premiership in '94. That must be something you want to get rid of as well.
Yeah, well, certainly, you know, we want to win today. We don't care where we are, you know, who we're playing and what the conditions are. We've just got to give it our best shot and aim to win. Now,
Bush, if there's one bloke that the players will play for, it's John Worsfold. Is there a chance that this could be your last game and that may be an extra spur as well?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, I'm obviously going to weigh it up after the season, and I'm hoping that the season's got a few more weeks to run for us, but you know, I don't know, and really that won't come into it today because you don't want to think that's your last game because you're banking on a loss then.
All right, Woosh, well, if it turns out that way, good luck, mate. You've been an absolute stalwart for the Eagles, and good luck out there today.
Thanks, Barrow.
Well, let's have a look at the West Coast Eagles squad, of course, coached by Mick Malthouse. He used to coach the Dogs before he went over to Perth, and here's their lineup.
Well, certainly Guy McKenna looks like being a late addition. McIntosh has been terrific at fullback and probably the form fullback of the season. Morrison, well, he can play all over the shop. He could be anywhere. Certainly across halfback. There's a bit of a whisper that John Worsfold might be a last-minute withdrawal as well. Certainly Jakovic, I guess, has been struggling. He may play on Chris Grant. Grant might be just the type of player for Jakovic to play on across midfield there. I think Dean Kemp is really important. He is the best offensive player of the Eagles midfielders. If he gets a bit of the ball, then the Eagles will be much better up forward. Fraser Gehry kicked 41 goals, so he's been the Eagles' main goal getter, but certainly struggled in the recent years. The later in the season hasn't been a good patch of the year for Fraser Gehry. Cross full forward, well, Fuster is named at full forward, and you mentioned Minton Connell. He's only kicked 11 goals, Fuster, in 13 games, so certainly for him to kick a big multiple total would be a bit of a surprise. Cousin probably play up in the midfield, ball in the ruck. Schofield, Braun being a terrific player, very hard worker. They will probably play man-to-man in the midfield, which is a bit of the way the Bulldogs like to play as well. And Banfield named on interchange, but you'd surprise if he doesn't start on the ground. Gardner, Metropolis and Stone.
And I suppose if Gardner starts on the bench, that reduces the possibility of him being mugged by a few of the Dogs players before the game.
I don't know whether, I think they'll be expecting it today, so I don't think it'll happen. That's a surprise tactic.
Yeah. Well, let's have a look at some of the matchups that we think might happen here. And, well, this has got a bit of a history to it. Libba and Ben Cousins. And there were some reports that Ben Cousins last year might have even been reduced to tears by Libba's just physical and verbal attack.
Well, no doubt that Liberatore plays mind games with his opponent, and the Bulldogs come out on the field, and certainly, yeah, Libba's mind games and Ramiro in the middle, they're really tough, hard nuts, and they set the standard of competitiveness, I think, for the Bulldogs team, and they just take the game to the opposition. You see Ramiro striding out there, body language of a man who's focused and is ready for a task at hand.
And he's a man who can tag. I wonder whether he might pick up somebody like Kemp, whom you mentioned.
Yeah.
Was the prime mover out of midfield for the Eagles.
Well, he's been getting so much of the ball, Ramiro. I think he'll be trying to get much of it. And, of course, the key forward position. I mean, Grant should be the type of player that Jakovic has to be able to control. Certainly the quicker moving centre-half forwards have been struggling against Jakovic, but Grant, although he's quick and agile, a champion player, it is the type of opponent that Jakovic should be able to hold at his best. But I think for most of the year, Glenn Jakovic has probably not been at his best. Chris Grant probably has been close to it.
Yeah, well, Jakovic just 4 possessions last week.
Well, this is on the midfield area. Scott West is probably the heart of the ball getting. He and Ramiro in close. Just maybe Drew Banfield will get that assignment. Most of the time, the Eagles midfielders. Kemp is the only player who's given a little bit of freedom. Most of the other players play one-on-one, and the mind games of the players trying to get their opponents that they're set for, that's going to be an intriguing battle within itself in the early stages of the game.
Well, these two teams have been physical in the past. It is a final. It might be again.
Happen.
It might be again. We'll be back after a short break at the MCG.
Imagine a washing machine versatile enough to handle the tough and the delicate, with a spin speed that cuts drying time by up to 30%. Smart Drive from Fisher & Paykel, the innovators.
It's international basketball at its best. The Australian Open's #3 in the world, taking on the USA, the world champions. Catch the action of Game 1, 8:30 p.m. Wednesday on Sports Australia.
Coming up next week on Sports Australia and Sports Australia 2, AFL. Catch the action of the semi-finals. Rugby, semi-finals of the New South Wales Club Premiership. Basketball, the Australian Opals take on world champions USA. Cricket, pad up for the England-Sri Lanka One-Day International. Rugby League, the NRL Final Series is hotting up. There's all this and much more next week on Sports Australia and Sports Australia 2.
And now, would you welcome to the MCG, the West Coast Eagles.
And that sums it up pretty well. Do or die as far as the West Coast Eagles are concerned. Beaten at home in the final qualifying round against the Adelaide Crows. They've put themselves in this boat, and now they've got to row it. Philip Matera, a late inclusion, number 33. Dogs are waiting for them. Out early. So the West Coast Eagles, perennial finalists in the 90s, with their backs to the wall this afternoon, lose and they're gone. John Worsfold, well, that's a story in itself. Selected on Thursday night, left out today.
Well, the interview we saw with Adrian Barrich, it did look as though Woosha was doing it through clenched teeth. So
Knew the bad news, I think.
yeah, he knew, but we weren't to know at the time.
Does that mean it's a career?
Are we talking omission or injury, you think, Dennis?
I think we're talking omission. Let's go down to the boundary. Men who may know more. We've got Adrian Barrage and Terry Wheeler. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Thanks, boys. Yeah, plenty of emotion in the West Coast Eagles rooms. John Worsfold out of the team. He hasn't been out of the finals in the 90s. He is the captain of the club. A big move by Mick Moldhouse to leave him out. Plenty of emotion. I think, Terry, that could fire the boys up. That'll give them something, because this could be, if they win today, Worsfold may be able to play next week. Otherwise, John Worsfold's career could be over, and he's been a magnificent player for the club.
Certainly, everything to play for, but in the Western Bulldogs room, there's not one scent of nervousness in there at all, Dennis. I mean, they're really in control. They've been through these big games of late, and they know what to do. There's a really good feeling there, and we mentioned Paul Hudson now, perhaps a little bit of freedom with Worsfold out. Well, Simon Minton-Connell come in, he could get the go-to.
I think Hudson would be relieved that Worsfold isn't playing, but the Eagles very confident, boys. They think they're a big chance here. They haven't won a final in Melbourne since 1994. And from their point of view, if they do win, they have a home final, which is a massive incentive. If they can get over the top of the Bullies today, we're back in Perth next week.
Well, good luck, Barra.
And what do you reckon about this weather? Do you reckon it'll rain?
Well, it's just some light spits have just started to fall here now. The breeze is still up here. Breeze is still up here and going down that way. I think it will hold, Barra. I think it'll be okay. But the Eagles, they would like some rain, I'm sure.
They are actually praying for rain,
yep.
Terry. They wanted to rain. They wanted to bog it down and stop the Bulldogs scoring effect. Ashley McIntosh, looks like picking up Chris Grant. So Ashley McIntosh did the job on the big man there. Probably Jakovic versus Darcy in the full forward line. And if Minton-Connell starts on the ground, will he start on the ground? If he does, Fraser Gehry will be down there on him.
Everything's ready. They're set to go down here, boys.
Yeah, thanks, guys. And I think we've got to say the best full forward in the MCG this afternoon is possibly sitting in the grandstand. Good afternoon, Pete McKenna.
Thanks very much, Dennis. That's a big rap coming from a West Coast Eagle man. Oh, well, a West Australian, I better say.
Where are you? Oh, there
well,
you
I'm
are.
way up here in the half-forward flank of the southern stand, and it is a fantastic view, a perfect day as far as forwards go. And I think, talking about forwards, that the Achilles heel of the West Coast is their forward line. If they're to have any chance in this game, they'll have to get terrific contributions from, firstly, Fraser Gehry, if he lines up at centre-half forward, and they'll certainly need Brett Hetty, Philip Matera, Ben Cousins, some of those smaller type players to nip in with goals. But they're not a high-scoring side, but they do have a very, very good defence. It'll be interesting to see down the other end. They've probably got the best forward on the ground, centre-half forward, Chris Grant. Be a great clash if McIntosh does pick him up. They've also got Colinook, who can kick goals. Montgomery can kick goals. And it'll be interesting also to see if Simon Minton-Connell lines up at full forward. Maybe he'll start on the bench and then they'll ease him in. But I'm looking forward to this game because it's a very, very big game with a lot at stake for both sides.
You know you've got it made when you've got your own security, don't you? And there's Pete in the grandstand, security just behind.
And
Peter McKenna has just left the building.
The security probably isn't as great as when he was playing for Collingwood. He needed more then.
That's right. One of the features of the finals is the play track, and Gerard Healy, our analyst, is working with that this afternoon as we say good afternoon, Gerard.
Good afternoon, Dennis. And, well, today we're going to have a look at the spaghetti trail of Ben Cousins. And, well, that may turn into a spaghetti western because Tony Liberatore, you would think, will be wearing him like a second jumper. And there may be some fireworks, as there has been in recent times with the Libber. We're also going to have a look at Scott Wind. We'll take a look at where he goes after centre bounces. Over the last couple of years, he's taken the tap and then pushed down into defence. We'll follow him in this first quarter.
Thanks, Gerard. Scotty Wind. Last time these sides played, he had 15 possessions, no kicks.
He's just so important, isn't he? And I guess we talk about the ruckman, Jeff White. I guess he's a leaping ruckman who runs all over the field. But Scott White, he plays the conventional role. Centre bounce, he tries to dominate that and just drops back into the hole, you know, behind centre-half back and does it so well that it's just launched so much of the Bulldogs rebounding out of their defensive part.
Well, looking back to last Saturday night for the West Coast Eagles, absolutely slaughtered in the centre square, weren't they, by Adelaide?
Yeah, well, certainly that two ruckman, Ball and Gardner, are going to have big games to be able to stop Scott Wine getting his hand to the ball first.
Getting set for the national anthem. John Russo, our fourth umpire, is with us as well. And John, what about the men in white this afternoon?
Oh, look, this is a pretty anxious time for them as well, but I'm sure that they'll be pretty relaxed and composed, even though the adrenaline starts to pump. It's important that they stay relaxed.
Not a vast crowd, but a good one. Let's go down to Craig Willis.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Australian Football League and Coca-Cola welcome you to the third qualifying final of the final series for 1998. Would you now please be upstanding for the playing of the national anthem?
As I said at the top of the program, they've been waiting a heck of a long time. Suddenly they've emerged in the last couple of seasons, but it's been a long while between drinks, going back to 1954. The West Coast Eagles, of course, in the finals throughout the 90s under Michael Malthouse. It was just a question of scraping in this time around. Here's the toss of the coin. Won by Scott Wind. The breeze hardly a factor. Just looking at the flags on top of the scoreboard.
I think, Dennis, you talk about the Eagles. I think their ability to come to Melbourne and win the grand final in 92 and 94. Certainly the Crows did it last year, but it takes a terrific side, I think, to get through a finals campaign when you've got to eventually play that last game in a foreign state. And I think the Eagles were a terrific unit back there. Question is, I don't think they're quite to that standard at this point.
Can anyone make a case for the Eagles, Drew?
It's pretty hard to,
yeah,
really.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah, they're just missing too many. And is Djakovic, who tossed the coin, that's an unusual sight as well. Is he 100% fit?
I don't think so. But fit enough to go. The Eagles lead this rivalry 13-6. Back in round 10, an amazing game between these two clubs. The West Coast Eagles home narrowly. I think the margin was 11 points from memory.
I thought 13, actually. It was the Bulldogs kicked the first 8 goals, and then the Eagles kicked the next 11.
Next 11, that's right.
Game.
19 at the one end. It wasn't that close, but it was just unbelievable, that match, and the standard very high as well. Free running team, the Bulldogs. They like to go, and of course, by contrast, the West Coast Eagles, gritty, like to hang on, close it down. The men in charge this afternoon, Goldspink, Nash and Ellis. The Eagles quartet to the dugout.
Rowan Smith coming to interchange. I think it's just getting the matchups right. He's not quite sure why he's here. I think he might be on pretty quick.
These two sides have never played in a final. They've never played on this ground. Against each other, that is.
And Garlick looks like he's on Cousins, not the Liberatore.
Crediuk having a bit to say to Fraser Gehrig. The start of the third qualifying final. Still it goes on outside the centre square. Opening bounce. Gardner had to wait. Wind had the run. Knocked it down. Slapped out of there by Grant. Taken by Waterman. Looping hand pass towards half forward. Curley knocks it away. Scott West the hand pass. Into the path of Johnson. Down he went. Onto the loose ball close to the boundary line is Braun. Feeds it back looking for Lewis, but it's gone across the line.
I wonder what Ben Cousins thought when all of a sudden we see Gehrig and Crediuk early in the game before the first bounce, but when Garlick came to Cousins and not Liberatore, just got a feeling that might have made Ben Cousins feel a little better.
He grabs the ball as if on cue and boots it down towards half forward. Good mark in front taken by Darcy. Fraser Gehrig worked up, working in close. So Darcy at centre half back, chips it out wide. Curley on his chest. Scott West is breaking for him. That's ignored as Djakovic comes across. So Curley from half back.
His kick up towards centre wing. Grant the lead. McIntosh on him. Grant couldn't take the mark. The hand pass, Darcy. Didn't go too far. Waterman, hurried kick out of the pack. Curley, a West Australian, in amongst a lot of West Australians here today. His kick up towards half forward. Hudson was caught behind, but with a bit of a fumble might get a chance. Stone didn't take clean possession. Hudson concedes some ground and possession as McIntosh outmarks Grant.
It's an interesting call to have McIntosh out on Grant and White back on Minton Connell in the true full-back position, given that McIntosh has certainly been the form full-back. Is he the form centre-half back?
Braun's kick to half forward, a punch up the ground by Croft. Comes to Brad Johnson. Through the middle he goes. Minton Connell named on the bench, but started at full forward. Here he goes, out near the 50. He's got it. And Collingham tries to break free. There's no clear path there, and the umpire comes in and will ball it up. Here's Darcy getting in front and taking the mark at half back. And Fraser Gehrig won right to the breadbasket early in the game. Gardner wins the hit out, but it comes down to Romero of the Dogs. Well inside the 50. White, the hand pass virtually up and down the one spot. Cousins has it, defensive 50. Southern stand side, pinpoint.
Reid to Kemp on the burst, on the wing. Dean Kemp settles, pulls it back towards the middle. In front is Morrison, knocked away from behind by Cameron. Must be a free kick there to West. He was taken high, advantages paid. Cameron comes away. Loose men on the broadcast side. Collinook's got it. Urged on by Smith, a couple of bounces. Johnson on for a short one, so too Ramiro. He chooses the latter. Jose's got it about 30 metres out directly in front. He elects to play on, off a step. Loose man in behind the defence, Montgomery. How did that happen? Goal.
Well, that was like they were still doing their warm-up.
Yes, I think you had that situation there where, let's have a look who goes to Montgomery. There'll be a very, very embarrassed Eagles player who say, uh-oh, he must have been mine. I think that play might have been Drew Banfield. He certainly got caught a long, long way from him, or maybe it was Waterman, but certainly you pop in behind the defence there. I guess it can happen. The turnover on the Eagles half-forward line, that was a critical point.
Oh. Well, the bounce down the middle, and still nobody has gone to pick up Montgomery. Be too embarrassed to get there for the next 5 minutes. And here's a whistle and a free kick to the Bulldogs at centre-half.
Crediuk for holding the man in that marking contest.
And still those two battle, Crediuk and Gehrig, and I think more will come from their last exchange.
Crediuk giving away height to Fraser Gehrig, but he's been giving him plenty right from before the bounce. Lewis marks on the logo centre wing. The Bulldogs, after an easy goal, lead by 6 points. The kick to the front edge of the centre square. Croft. There's speculation that he might line up on the forward line, but he is in the back half. Comes to Braun for the Eagles. Left half forward, keeps the pass low. Good half volley pick up, Crediuk. Not a great distance with the kick. Knocked down by Smith. Smith through the centre circle. Wide open for the Bulldogs. Minton Connell, welcome back. Here's a man who hasn't played since round 14. Gets a chance in the finals because of Cook's suspension. And inside the opening 5 minutes takes a mark with a clear break on his opponent.
Great rebound, wasn't Rowan Smith? When he starts to charge through the centre square, he just played it smart, came back onto his right side, and Minton Connell leading to space, just copybook football for the leading full forward.
Will this be the Dogs' second goal? Whatever breeze getting to the playing surface is at his back. Minton Connell goals!
Say they all seem to be at 6s and 7s, the West Coast midfielders. I think there'll be a lot of players out there just at this point who aren't exactly sure who their direct opponent is, because when the Bulldogs have rebounded off the half-back line twice now, they've had many, many players free. But Rowan Smith, he's a very classy player, and Minton Connell, from about 51 metres, a great morale-boosting finish.
Forgotten man, Simon Minton Connell. Pete?
Yes, Dennis, and very, very different down the other end where you've got Jason Ball, and the Eagles rely on just belting it up high, hoping someone can take a mark, whereas down the other end, they've got a leading full forward, and I think that'll make a big difference in the long run.
Gardner goes up and knocks it down. West tries to dig it out, slaps it wide. Curley is in there. In effect, knocked it away from West, who butters up again. Well played, Scotty West. Ball up outside the centre square. No player has got more free kicks this season than Scott West.
See there, Michael Braun given the big job on Scott West.
Plenty of players around the ball, queued up, knocked down by Johnson. Romero falling to the ground, hurried kick. Collinwood did well, being held. Hand passes to Johnson, claimed by Banfield. Romero on his knees, digs it out again. Eventually, it's worked wide by Wirra into the path of Johnson, kicks it down towards the attacking 50 for the Dogs. But it's out of bounds on the full.
And interesting, we know that Worsfold and McKenna are both not playing, and Jakovic, as well, he lined up at centre-half back. Darcy is taking him down the other end of the ground and making just play as a midfield runner, basically, against Luke Darcy.
Here's White taken from Gardner up towards centre-half forward. Montgomery's playing as a loose man in defence, so when he drifted up to the goal square to kick the first goal, he'd gone 150 metres on his own.
I think he's just playing as a pretty conventional half forward, but really pushing back and playing off the half-back line, Drew.
Minton Connell on the cricket pitch area. Bumped off the ball, Stone the hand pass, White out of defence, good pass. Simmons has it in the middle of the ground. Jakovic on the forward line, marks outside half forward, goes long, Croft gets back, and good mark. Croft towards the outer side to Smith, who started it for the last goal. He was going to get a free kick. Advantage to Rowan Smith. Jose unmarked on centre wing. Here goes Romero. Moves are plenty on the forward line. Hudson had to deviate. Down goes Garlick. Cousins for the Eagles. Slides the hand pass to Waterman. The Eagles up against it, having conceded 2 goals already. Banfield through the wing. Kick by Drew Banfield to the 50. Gehrig. Krediuk did well. Gehrig got a touch. And Liberatore at ground level. Play on, says the umpire. Ball palming off Wirra. Comes to Banfield. Short pass. Might be all right for Philip Matera. Forward pocket. Just gets boot to ball. It's kept in by the Dogs, who want to keep it alive. Croft.
Close to the boundary line.
Yes, it's interesting, the tactical approach. I've got the impression today that the Bulldogs, who often play very tight around the middle of the ground, they've certainly got Garlick onto Cousins, but I think they're actually taking the punt of trying to make it a free-flowing game on the basis that they can score better than the Eagles, and I think it's a run and attack from their midfielders as much as man-to-man responsibility.
Great tackle moments ago from Montgomery. And the ball close to the boundary line. Free kick to Banfield. Drew Banfield on the wing. Kicks to half forward. He'll direct Montgomery in the road. Bulldogs lead it by 12 points. Wants to go. Didn't think through it very well. Gardner gathers it. Garlick gathered him. Hand pass from Banfield comes across to Waterman. Feigns a kick. He's about 75 metres out. Sets it up. Gehrig opts out of the contest at the back in front wide.
Holding
Darcy. Darcy's going to get a free.
Interesting move that, isn't it, Darcy? He's really just playing as a, even though he's probably one of the designated Bulldogs forwards, he's going into defence. And as I said, dragging Glenn Jakovic into that part of the ground.
Wide the target now. Uncontested. Plays on immediately. Cameron on the burst up from half back. Romero comes back to Cameron. A little bit too easy at the moment. Cameron's on the wing. Assesses what's up ahead. Kicks it down towards the 50. Minton Connell came up to mid it. Slipped. Waiting behind a chance for Reid. Gets it away to White. White back towards the middle. McIntosh under pressure. Hurriedly kicks it up towards midfield. It worked out okay. Morrison alongside the centre circle. Takes off. Far too ambitious. Well done by Croft. It was 3 against 1, and Croft won it.
Poor play, wasn't it? It should have been a hand pass over the top, but he seemed to want to try and break the tackle.
Krediuk kick to half forward. Hudson beaten to the ball. The punch down to the front to Lewis. On the burst is Cousins. He's kicked to half forward. Gehrig plays on. Fraser Gehrig for the Eagles' first goal. Oh, so close, a poster. Well, they're on the board.
Taken them a long, long time to get that first scoring shot away. They've been forward, but they haven't been able to get the ball within the forward 50-metre area until that last second or two.
Cameron's kick to Wirra. Now he breaks towards the southern stand side. Johnson. And he dashes away from Gehrig. This attack at all costs by the Bulldogs is carving up the Eagles at the moment. Brad Johnson, good long run. The kick to Minton Connell. Well, Minton Connell's kicked 5 goals in the seniors for the year. He does lead the reserves goal kickers list. But
yeah, it's amazing. He and Cook, who've been vying for the full forward position, they're both this kind of player who can have terrific patches of games. Certainly not game after game after game to approach the 100 goal, you know, the real sort of benchmark for full forwards, but certainly in periods of games, both Cook and Minton Connell have just really been very destructive players.
Well, man on the mark's only about 30 to 35 metres out. Minton Connell gets his second.
Yes, this is a big decision, I reckon, by Mick Moldhouse. He's probably reasoning that Chris Grant is their most dangerous Bulldogs forward, so he's got Ashley McIntosh out there. But I think when Minton Connell leads hard for the ball, the McIntosh speed's maybe what they need. I don't know whether Mitchell White, will be able to run with Minton Connell on the burst from the goal square.
Simon Minton Connell has bitted 2 goals. He got 5 against the Eagles last season, round 6. Bounce back in the middle. Gardner knocks it away from Wind. Braun down towards half forward. Prettyhook did well to knock it away. Chance for Heady. Overran the ball. Slapped out of there by Montgomery. Into the path of Romero. Hand passes forward. Taken by Lewis. Chips it across the ground. Still inside the centre square. Ball was going. Johnson picked his pocket. Gets the hand pass away. This is Darcy. Darcy. Romero taken by Gehrig. It spills across to Wind. Feeds it back. Liberatore has it now. Inside his own defensive 50. Goes out to the wing. Prettyhook has the ball, but it will come back.
It'll come back in a free kick to West Coast Eagles, Dennis. I'm not sure what it was paid for, but it was about 6 or 8 metres off the ball, the signal given by the umpire, and so the infringement taken from where the ball was. Here's the Romero tackle. Now, it wasn't paid for that, obviously, because there was nothing
against Libba.
Well, Libba kicked the ball. Yeah, Macca may have seen it up from the other side there.
Yes, I did, Lee. It was against Jose Romero, who behind the play on Gehrig. Gehrig's coming in for an enormous amount of attention there. Obviously, they think he might be a bit mentally soft or something because they're ripping into him from all angles, particularly Steve Prettyhook. But he's got the last laugh because he's got the kick at goal.
Or a potential match winner, Pete. Now, come on. There's
I'm only saying what they think.
Okay, mate. From 55 metres out, miscues. Wine, good grab. Watching the hand pass here. As I said, last time they played, 15 possessions, didn't have a kick. All of them handballs. This will test him now. Forced a kick. A moral victory for the Eagles. He boots it out towards half-back. Montgomery on his chest. Hit the ground running. He's playing well. Kicks it up towards midfield. Reid in best position. Did well.
Reid, terrific first season. Off to Lewis. Now Simmons, midfield. Penetrates the 50. Giakovic on the forward line. Kemp a bit of a fumble at the front of the pack. Grant back at half-back. Croft has been sensational. Hand pass made West wait for it. McIntosh gets a bit of a lead from Cousins. Cousins back to the 50. Heady didn't get to the contest. Kemp and Liberatore. Ball up. Now, let's have a look at this free kick that was paid against Jose to Gehrig. The ball's long gone. Nearly had to get on a stepladder to infringe, and I'm still not sure what it's for.
Well, that was obviously the incident, but whether there was anything that warranted a free kick and all that.
Oh, dear. Grant. He's got Garlick. Grant paddles back, but Lewis is there for the Eagles. Kick by Lewis to half forward, and Gardner takes the mark. Dogs have 3 goals, the Eagles just a point, midway through the first term.
Giakovic up ahead. Michael Gardner back in the side this afternoon. Driving it inside the attacking 50. Jakovic still the target from behind Montgomery. He's been threatening that for a couple of weeks. He's taken a few goodies this season. And that's a contender for the Cadbury Mark of the Year. Montgomery.
Great mark.
Crowd pleaser. Opposite pocket. Wirras away. Bouncing around the outer side up towards right half back. Kicks towards the wing. Ill directed though. Lewis built the mark. Hudson will beat two of them now. Kicks it down towards half forward. Half blanketed. Garlick, did he have the ball? Grant comes out. Claimed by McIntosh. It's in there somewhere. Ball up.
Takes a lot of courage to go for the big leap when you're 30 minutes from the opposition goal, really. Had the sit, no doubt about that. Had the teammate to keep him up as well, but this is a fantastic leap and, well, chest mark a long way up.
Crofty will be in the papers tomorrow. It's a bit like fame by association, like blokes who used to get shot by Jesse James. It's knocked down by Gardner inside the centre square. Braun hand passes back. Waterman, unkind bounce, under pressure. Hand passes up towards the wing. Kemp, Waterman, right half back, taking plenty of time. Kicks to a contest. Hetty did brilliantly. Almost the mark, not paid. Knocked across the line. Fair enough too. Boundary throw in.
Dennis, Jason Ball is now playing just on Darcy, and Glenn Jakovic is the full forward, the official full forward for the Eagles now with Croft.
Well, that's interesting because Jakovic has kicked one goal for the season, so they came in with a poor attacking record, but he's an interesting option to full forward. All and all tackle. Jack, how would you have paid it?
Well, I'd say holding the ball. I mean, he's taken the tackler on, tried to duck under it, been wrapped up by a legal tackle and didn't dispose of the footy. It's pretty clear cut. He opted for the ball up, many would say.
This is in between wing and half forward for the Bulldogs. They're dominating. It comes down to Hudson. Infringement in ruck. Free kicks going to Darcy.
Interesting now that Ball has gone on to Darcy. Wouldn't be surprised if Darcy starts spending a bit more time in the forward line and making Ball play as probably an unsuited defender.
Stone and Hudson having a bit of a grapple off the ball. Darcy kicks inside centre half forward. Grant is there. Minton Connell, the flyer. It comes down to White, who's had a torrid time of it at the start of the game. The kick by White to centre wing. All Bulldogs. Darcy has it. From the logo to the 50. Not quite to Grant. Clever by Minton Connell. Grant had regained his footing. Into Johnson. Minton Connell's kicked two already. Puts it into the park. At centre half forward, Rowan Smith. Goal!
Yes, terrific hard-working goal, and looks like he may have hurt a hamstring. I think he felt that earlier in the quarter, but really just great hard work. He wasn't in the Bulldogs forward line. Quick hands under pressure. They just kept distributing the ball to each other until eventually Rowan Smith, one step, two step, faced the goal, and through it goes.
More bad news for the West Coast Eagles. Brett Hetty off the ground. Appears to be injured. Heavy collision on the wing just moments ago. The Bulldogs are dominating this. They're up by 23 points and looking irresistible. Gardner knocks it down. West spins out of trouble. Gets the kick down towards half forward once more, so the defence for the Eagles will have to butter up again. Taken high, Grant, was he? Held to him, says the umpire.
Dennis, the Eagles seem to have lost Brett Hetty. He may be out for the rest of the game. He's got a sore, badly hit left knee and getting a lot of treatment. I think they may lose him.
So those missing. The West Coast Eagles, something of a who's who as far as their list is concerned. Over the ball, Johnson. Colinook pulls it right across the ground. Curley tracking it out towards right half forward. Stops, confronted by Kemp. Got past him. He'll kick this.
Well, I've got to say very quickly, Dennis, it's a long, long time since we've seen an Eagles defence without Worsfold, McKenna and Jakovic. Certainly Worsfold and McKenna are missing. There's no choice about that. I guess Worsfold may have been a mission. But Jakovic down the other end, just at the moment, I think you'd have to be seriously consider getting Jakovic back onto Grant, McIntosh back to full-back on Minton Connell, because just at the moment, the Bulldogs are just absolutely carving up this Eagles defensive group.
Could be the end of the day for Brett Hetty. He hasn't had a possession and he's off in the first quarter. What a start by the Bulldogs, 5 straight. Could they repeat the 8 goals they kicked against the Eagles last time they met? Grant's hand pass into Romero. He bounces it towards the 50. It bounces on and on. Hudson with Stone. Stone defends for the Eagles. Cousins, well done. Ben Cousins, an outstanding season. Inside the 50, Crediuk in front of Gehrig. Croft has been excellent. Back to Crediuk. Support by Liberatore. Shovels the ball out. Off the ground goes Curley. And kept in by Morrison. Taken out by Crediuk. Right under Peter McKenna. Pete?
Yes, Drew. I think a good move by Mick Malthouse. Gehrig's gone to full forward and Jakovic out towards centre half forward. So I think that's a far better team lineup.
Coming through is Morrison, one of the matchups so far. There's the print out. Gardner goes back. Wind. Hurriedly up towards the wing and Cameron. He takes off. Kicks towards half forward. Montgomery on his chest. Hudson goes again. Stone with him. Montgomery indicating he wants to get towards the pocket. 4 goalless terms this season for the West Coast Eagles. Grant was up, couldn't complete the mark. Stone down in front, knocks it out towards the boundary line. Coming through is Waterman, kept it in. Back towards Simmons now. Simmons from half back, stubs it up towards the wing. Gardner to the run of Morrison. Morrison probing kick, not spinning too well. It goes down towards the pocket. Crediuk just takes it across the line. Just talking about those goalless quarters. One of them is against the Bulldogs, of course, that first quarter at the WACA ground in round 10. And the margin there was 14 points. Bulldogs beaten by 14 that night, and one of the great comeback stories of the season. Hard to see it happening again. 29 points the margin here, so not as great. Wind, beaten by Ball at the second attempt. Picked up by Crediuk, who boots it wide. Cousins backed himself against the ball. Well played again by Montgomery. Slaps it out to the voice supplied by Hudson. Hudson almost kept it in. It trickles across the line.
Just high possession getters. Ramiro's had 10 disposals already. Drew Banfield has now been put onto him. Just such a hard runner, Ramiro. Just an incredibly improved player over these last few seasons.
And Lee, just with the hard running, when the goal scorers of Montgomery, Smith and Curley are all spending time at half-back, so there's a real setup, getting back behind the ball and running hard in the Bulldog forward line.
Whereas kick, great pick up by Chris Grant, and he palmed off a couple and got the kick going the Bulldogs' way. Johnson, no distance with the kick. Reed. Oh, just hitting it hard, Garlic. Grant again, pops it out in front of Jose. In he comes to Rowan Smith, who's kicked one and set up a couple. Smith, a long kick, offline this time, and it's marked just in the field of play by White, so it's no score.
It's a good long kick, Rowan Smith, but he had to kick that ball 60 metres, and he had 3 Bulldogs players pretty much against 1 Eagles defender, but decided to back himself from a long distance, and a lot of long shots usually end up in a lot of long behinds.
So White actually kept the Bulldogs' record intact. They're 5 straight goals. He marked it a centimetre inside the field of play. It's taken a long time to kick it in. That's trouble. Well, Jakovic has got back to defence, and he had to come a long way down to get his first touch.
Drew, there's nobody in the Eagles' 50-metre area in their forward line, not one player.
Kick by Jakovic back to midfield. Gardner has the ball punched away. It comes to Simmons. Waterman on the 50, comes outside now. He's about 65 metres out. They all dash to the forward line. Waterman puts it out in front of Kemp. Well played, Dean Kemp, their first goal.
Yes, well, I guess it's one of the, what we see in footy as we get into this latter part of the 90s is really just the bulk of players just follow the ball. And vacant forward lines are nothing unusual. We see North Melbourne do it all the time. And kick the ball long, let your forwards run back with the flight of the ball. He had to be good enough to do that, Kemp, because it wasn't an easy mark, but did it very well.
Bulldogs on top. They lead by 23 points, almost quarter time. 3rd qualifying final from the MCG. Ward didn't see what happened. Something perhaps off the ball is
Jakovic
wide.
shoved
Luke Darcy into the square. Yep, that's right.
Okay, Darcy, well, it helped him. He finished up with the ball. Garlick grabs it, but only as far as Stone. Stone plays on. This is Morrison. Morrison drives it out towards the outer side wing. Jakovic lets it bounce. This will be interesting. It runs away from Jakovic and Grant and goes across the line. Jakovic and Darcy. Whoa!
Now, we saw that paid as a free kick last night in Sydney.
Yeah, the boundary umpire just must have missed that. Johnny would have paid if he seen it, didn't he?
Yeah, well, the field umpire saw it too, though, Lee.
Jakovic and Darcy again. It fell in front. Banfield trying to knock it through the congestion. Wirra, Banfield hurriedly onto the boot, down towards half forward. Gehrig in front. Krediuk behind. No one wants the ball. Eventually poked out of there by Philip Matera, picked up by Simmons, across to Lewis. Lewis takes on Wirra, gets past him, kicks well inside the 50 now. No height down there as far as the Eagles are concerned. It comes down, but straight to Liberatore, who on the siren kicks it up towards the wing. And I think the Bulldogs would be well satisfied with their opening term.
Brian, did we get all the matchups just where you wanted them there? Five goals straight, good one.
Yeah, we're converting pretty well. They've probably got it inside 50 more than we have, but once we get in there, we're converting well.
And will we see the full back kick a goal? Because everyone else from the back's having a shot at it.
I think that's the key to our game, isn't it? The run from the half-back line, and the guys are giving us plenty of that.
Good on you. Keep it going.
Thanks, mate.
Ryan Royal cut out to Coach, giving nothing away. Gerard Healy has been monitoring the Pineapple Head play track. Gerard?
Thanks, Dennis. Well, as you've already discussed, the Eagles having a bit of difficulty scoring. One of the reasons is we're following Scott Wine, what he does the first minute after every centre bounce. And you can see pretty clearly that he's defensively minded. I'm sure that Terry Wallace doesn't want him going forward of that centre area, and he wants him to push back into defence to make it even more difficult for the Eagles to score.
It's like a scene out of LA Story. We're all sitting here looking at that, interpreting it. Bounce back in the middle then to start this second term. Up goes Gardner and wide. It comes down to Banfield. 5 goals to 1-1. Schofield grabs the footy and kicks inside the 50. Ball goes back and takes a beauty. And copped an errant boot, I think, as well on the way down. But that was a wonderful mark.
Thinks he's Wayne Carey running with the flight of the ball. That was just fantastic, wasn't it, really? The ball really wasn't his. It looked like being a contest between Waterman and Cameron, but ball, great desperation. That's what the Eagles need in their forward line, to jump at the ball like that.
Pete?
Well, it's a much better forward setup now, Dennis, down that Eagles forward line. Thank goodness they've finally got Gehrig down to the goal square on his own, one out, and ball up at centre half forward where he's 6'5½". He can use his mobility and strength. And look, they've got to rely on someone like Gehrig to kick 5 or 6 goals if they've got any chance of winning this game.
Well, they'll be happy to start with Jason Ball. He'll kick from about 35 metres out, 45-degree angle. Sets it on its way. It's a good-looking kick. They've got their second.
Yes, you've got to make the most of your chances. Certainly the breeze swirls a little bit at the MCG, but it's probably, if anything, looks like it's favouring that in anyway. But certainly, I guess it's just the centre square clearance, isn't it? The Banfield, then Schofield. But this is really making a mark from the 50-50 situations, and it's hard to do it a lot of times in a game, but that's just what the Eagles needed.
Well, they're within 3 straight kicks. So this isn't all over yet by any stretch of the imagination. Wine's tap goes straight to the opposition. Schofield's kick chopped off by West. Kick by Scott West towards half forward. Reid couldn't take the mark. Spills to Stone. Well done, Banfield. Comes back to Reid. A break from half back. Banfield followed up. Long kick on the left inside 50. Punched down by Cameron. Desperation by Matera. Cameron regains. Comes to Darcy and he goes for touch. It stays in for Gardner. He had a week. Needed it, but took every minute of it. Into Jakovic. 65 metres out from goal. Goal square job. Gehrig's got the height, but didn't get to the contest. And Krediuk gets the ball out of bounds.
Push paid.
It's a free kick.
to Crediuk, I think.
And Crediuk will take the free.
For pushing the back in that marking contest.
To Cameron. It's across the ground. Liberatore. War goes up in the MCG as he kicks it towards the wing. In front Cousins. He'll get the free.
They're good sides. They're starting to win a few contests, the Eagles. The hard ball gets in the first quarter. We're 9 to Bulldogs, only 3 to the Eagles. But early in the second quarter, they've won 2 or 3 genuine contests.
They're down by 17 points. Jankovic to Philip Matera. Liberatore crept up a couple. Pulled back. Well, not far. So Philip Matera will kick from outside the 50. 5 straight to 2-1. And the Eagles looking better at the second term.
Oh, that's
the ball
low percentage.
goes out of bounds on the full.
Low percentage. He's probably got 45 metres out, maybe getting towards the edge of his kicking distance, Philip Matera, but passing the ball to the boundary line in the forward pocket. There's a lot of things have to go right for a goal to end up being scored from that type of play.
So Johnson got the free. Darcy, big ride, couldn't hang on. Bad luck. Away comes Waterman. Pumps it back inside the attacking 50. Ball knocked away by Croft. Curley camped in front. Little chip pass. Releases Johnson, who likes a run. Bounces at once. Comes up towards the wing. Kicks just beyond the wing. And Montgomery takes the mark, falling to the ground.
Brett Montgomery kicks towards the 50. Poor kick. Didn't have the carry to find Minton Connell. And Reid takes the mark.
This is where I think Eagles on the way forward have to use Michael Gardner. They know Wine's going to drop back quickly. Gardner just has to drift in towards the front of the centre square, towards the 50-metre mark, and they've just got to be able to use him if he's left there vacant.
Morrison now up towards the wing. Big pack climb. Darcy doing the work of a rover. Out to Montgomery. He started the match with a goal in the first quarter. Another kick astray. Reid had a chance, but it just carried Reid, and at the back, Grant.
It's an interesting kick, this. We always think Chris Grant is a very precise kick of the ball. He's had a little bit of trouble with his accuracy this year because he tends to have a really tight kicking action. Took the terrific low mark, gets his head over the ball and is very, very precise, but doesn't really have a big follow through, and therefore a 50-metre kick is usually maximum distance. Just let's see if he will relax and really kick through it hard.
That was his first mark. Oh, he doesn't clear the man on the mark, McIntosh. So it's not looking like a well-oiled machine just at the moment for the Dogs as it was in the first quarter. Brown. Brown's kick partly smothered. Play on, ruled the umpire. The punch by Grant comes to West. Play on again, says the umpire. Eagles putting on pressure and smothering some kicks here. Simmons in trouble. Oh, lucky to get away with the ball up.
In that Chris Grant situation, kicked in the man on the mark partly because you're trying to get every metre close to goal as you could, and just obviously got too close to the man on the mark. Not quite confident of kicking 50 metres long and accurate.
Gee, John, what constitutes prior opportunity?
Yeah, look, he certainly did try to turn out of the first tackle, but there wasn't a lot of time before he was actually wrapped up.
Interesting match-up that. Ramiro's the one getting the ball. Cousins isn't his direct opponent, of course, but certainly Ramiro been very good in the midfield.
There's Brown. Only as far as Smith on the bounce initially, but Smith can make it look better. Pops it inside the 50, left behind by Minton Connell. Garlick picks it up, gets away from White. Pops it up towards the kick-off line. Great effort by Stone. May have got a free in any case. Hudson tried to bump him off the ball. Took a falling mark. Hand passes to Cousins. Kicked it directly to Scott West. Feeds it back towards the middle. Grant is there. Confronted by Braun. Grant and Braun battle on the ground. It spills to Cousins. Well played by Grant. Got a hand on the handball. Eventually it comes from Cousins across to McIntosh. Chops his way through. Gets the hand pass to Reid. Reid breaks away from half-back. Penetrating kick towards half-forward. Waterman in front. Knocked away by Cameron. Was it? Yes, it was. Play on was the call. Waiting in front. The hand pass from Matera. Came to Morrison. Morrison the long bomb. Gardner goes back. Spilt it. Gehrig deep in the pocket. Wants the middle. Denied that. Crediuk falling to the ground. Had it a while. Gehrig knocked it away from him. Well, that's an interesting call. He did have it a while, but Fraser Gehrig did knock it to the ground.
That's right. Bear in mind, those decisions are normally paid when the player elects to dive on the ball or drag the ball in, and that certainly wasn't the case with Crediuk then. He actually went to the ground with the ball rather than electing to dive on it or drag it in, and I know that sounds technical, but the umpires are told to distinguish between the two.
Gehrig deep in the pocket. touch of luck for the Eagles. He's kicked the goal, I think. Great kick.
I think it's true, you mentioned a couple of minutes ago. Certainly the Bulldogs aren't going like the well-oiled machine. The Eagles, they certainly got the scoring. Let's have a look at this situation. It's just the flurry for possessions. He sort of falls on it. It's underneath him. But yes, John, he certainly didn't dive on it, did he, John?
No, he didn't dive on the ball and didn't elect to drag it in. So they are different situations.
Now, what about our men on the boundary line? This is a different game now.
Different game, that's for sure. Mick gave me a huge rev at quarter time, said, you've done it to me again. It was like the whacker all over again. But they have lost Brett Heady for the day, boys. He won't come back. But they have Fuster, Wooden and Metropolis on the bench. Fuster could be a forward option.
And for the Dogs, Nathan Brown on for his first run, but there's also been quick changes with Smith on and off, and now Kolnikov with a left thigh injury, boys.
Thanks, Wheels. Morrison back to Reid, up towards half forward. Defensive mark taken by Curley. Out to Brown, the youngster, who wins a spot in the seniors for the final. Up to Scott West. Dogs had 5 goals to nothing, but now it's 5 goals to 3. Eagles have hit back. Cousins. All say the crowd and the umpire agrees. Taken quickly. Garlick puts it up towards the goal square. White is back there. Minton Connell knocks it his way. The hand pass, slick for Wirra. Another backman. Offline.
It's interesting. I mean, Adrian Barrich down there knows the Eagles very well. How will McIntosh run the game out at centre-half back? And will White have the acceleration to stay with the Minton Connell lead?
Well, Lee, I think that's the big question. I think McIntosh's fitness will be okay. He's had a superb year. White hasn't played back at all and will be sorely tested back there.
Simmons missed it. Grant runs into an open goal and kicks it.
Well, they're the kind of defensive errors you just don't need when you're really trying to get back on terms. It's a goal that the opposition didn't earn. It's a goal that you gave to them. Let's just have a look at Simmons. Just dropped the mark, and oh no, he knows it's gone. And Grant just drilled it low.
Well, that little defensive mistake by the Eagles might just get the Bulldogs started again. They ground to a halt for a while. Gardner in the middle, but it comes down to Romero. Bounces over Simmons, who's had a horror 30 seconds. Hand pass by McIntosh out wide. Missed the target. Montgomery. Ball bounced past him. Well played, Scotty West to Brown. Good hand pass to Montgomery, who followed up. Centering kick. Minton Connell.
Yes, I just think that on that surge for the ball, you could see really that White just had trouble quite getting there, that extra yard to get there on Minton Connell. Terrific centre of the ball by Montgomery. I think the Bulldogs players knew that when you're caught on the boundary line, the ball's going to be centred back into the corridor, and they got there first.
So Simon Minton Connell going for his 3rd. He might match in one final what he's kicked all season. Poster.
Steve Collinnook on the boundary. Mitchell White. Well, what will he do this time?
A bit nervous with this kicking. I think he might be picking his target pretty carefully.
He went back into the square last time, muttering. To the pocket. Here's Reid.
Whoa. Gee, that almost should have been played on, John.
Yeah, exactly right, Lee. Attempting to play the ball other than over your marker's play on, so cocking the handball is sufficient as long as it's other than over the mark.
Reid out of the back pocket up towards half back. Back goes Croft. Couldn't complete the mark. Falling to the ground. Ball did nicely. Schofield dragged down. Lewis left it behind. Still he goes, Lewis. West put the body in aggressively. Got the hand pass away. Curley slips it across to Montgomery, who goes to right half forward, and Johnson. Banfield stands the mark. Johnson about 65 metres out from goal. Fairy tale for him, playing in the finals for the Dogs. He grew up barracking for the Dogs. Good kick to the middle, and Garlick has it. About 40 metres out directly in front. So a lot of this traceable, I think, back to that defensive mistake that gave the goal to Grant.
Yeah, it really is a terrible blow to your morale when you actually have fought your way back with a couple of goals, as the Eagles did. And Chris Lewis there, maybe just got the arm caught at the wrong spot. Maybe the finger. You can almost see the finger dislocated.
Simon Garlick directly in front, normally a good finisher. And this kick is away to the right, so they're missing their chances now. They took them cleanly in the first term. They've hit the post, Wirra missed, and now Garlick.
You mentioned Johnson, born and raised Bulldogs man. What about Garlick? He's the opposite end of the scale. Pre-season trade from the Sydney Swans, and he's played every game this season.
It's an interesting situation there. Darcy, while he's lining up at centre-half forward, is basically playing up into the loose defender, and Jakob is just floating around a bit, not getting enough of the ball.
And Darcy's going to add to his stats again. Goes in short. Oh, he had a choice of players. It was Hudson or Grant. Just as well they didn't collide. Grant has it.
Very instinctive and quick, wasn't it, then, by Darcy. He actually knew he was outside kicking distance, so as soon as there was a bit of time, and he really split the two Bulldogs players. I'm not sure. I've got a feeling he might have been aiming at Hudson, to be honest, but didn't really matter. And Grant, this is well within his kicking distance. Just a very important goal is to just make the most of this last few minutes of Bulldogs domination.
45 metres right in front. Gets his second.
Yeah, it's a good finish by Grant there. Let's have a look at this. Certainly the setup was good. Cleared centre corridor. They don't go and block it up. With this kicking action, he just tends to lean back a little bit more. That was just the perfect kicking action. Often Grant just gets too hunched over his legs in a ball.
2 goals and 2 marks for Chris Grant this afternoon. 1 low down, and that last one, his season's high 16 against St Kilda back in round 14. Here's Gardner, slips it away. Too slick there for Drew Banfield. Now Garlick comes up with the footy.
Interesting, the marking situations. Around the middle of the field, the Eagles are getting most of them 21-11. But in the 50-metre arcs, where it's really important, within a kick of either goal, Bulldogs are leading 15-8. So certainly they're marking the ball where it actually counts, close to goal.
And Croft and Fuster about 80 metres away from this bounce. Up goes Wine, taken over the shoulder. And will he get the free? No.
50-metre arcs. You sound like the Hawk when you said that. 50 arcs.
Be careful with it. So bounce alongside the centre circle. West waiting to come on. Wind again with Gardner. Wind at the second attempt. Slaps it out wide. Lewis leads in the race. Plenty of company. Look away hand pass didn't work initially. Stone grabs it. Comes across to Cousins trying hard. Cousins towards half forward. Brown. Well done. Inside the centre square. Brown wants to go. Kicks towards half forward. Well weighted kick from Nathan Brown. Hudson has it 55 metres from goal. Towards the pocket. Low down. Some holding. Minton Connell, I think, will get the free. Held by White.
Yes, again, this is where you're a little concerned about the speed. So the right hand on the jumper, John, pretty obvious on the replay, and the umpire obviously saw it.
Well, it certainly looked as though Minton Connell may have been holding Mitchell White's as well in those early stages, but obviously Mitchell White held on just that little bit longer.
Simon Minton Connell kicking at his third right here. Cook out suspended. Minton Connell comes in. Ball is White with the world still on this Bulldog forward line. Question of accuracy. And he's missed. Another behind. The lead is substantial. It could have been far greater. Michael Malthouse.
They just don't have a look of the team, the Eagles, that is going to kick, 6 goals and a quarter, do they? They just look like they're just grinding away. They're going to make the most of every opportunity to win.
Interesting to see the interchange there. West for West. Scott West has had 11 touches.
Team balance.
Morrison up to half forward. Tapped out by Fuster. Down to Matera. Goal square contest. Oh, Gehrig. Well, he did well to trap the ball underneath him. Then he missed with the soccer.
Still in. They hit the behind post.
Score one for the goal umpires. He saw that. Just a little touch too, wasn't it?
Yeah, the boundary umpire had no hope. He was 150 metres away. So it is a West sort of a day. Western Bulldogs, West Coast Eagles, and on comes Mark West for Scott West. There's a goal, Fuster!
Yes, one of those standard boundary throw-ins we see in the forward pocket where the Eagles were able to clear the space between the goals and the contest, and it was just a question of someone getting a run through it and taking the ball with them. Happened to be Fuster. Not necessarily that I see him take the punt there, and just maybe Croft wasn't expecting Fuster to the big player running through the contest, so a good instinctive goal.
Just over 8 minutes to half-time. Peter McKenna.
Interesting, Dennis. The small player Leon Cameron back at centre-half back playing on Jason Ball. A huge difference in height there.
Wind out of the middle, kicking towards half-forward for the Dogs. The light's well and truly on. Jakovic goes back, takes the mark. Wide on the defensive 50. And Jakovic, who made his comeback against the Western Bulldogs in round 10 after that knee surgery, started on the forward line. Around the outer side, Gardner pushed off the kick. He sprays it out of bounds on the fall.
And that Cameron on Ball has become, because the Eagles have now got the three very tall players. Ball, Fuster, who Croft's taking Fuster, and of course Gerwick and Crediuk. So yeah, it's a fair difference in size. But they're going to have to mark the ball because they're going to be slow on the rebound.
Curley around the outer side. Was Grant pushed in the back? Darcy gets up. Grant will get the free.
And Lee, what's not going to help them is it's starting to rain down here on the ground, so that's going to help the big Eagles forward line. Gehrig is really the only answer for to replace Mitchell White on Minton Connell, I think.
Margin is 21 points. Smith gave a lead. Grant, wide-eyed, kicks inside the 50. White worked out of it. Still got a hand to it. Played it well, yes. Got it down to Stone. Stone blanketed off the boot by Minton Connell. Well done by the Bulldog forward there. Johnson hand passes back across his shoulder. Eventually got the fifth man in the chain. Lewis had it. Hudson goes off the ground and puts it out of bounds on the full in the opposite pocket.
What about the standard setup, Barra, of Jakovic on Grant at centre half back and McIntosh sort of back to that defensive slot? What do you think about that? Could Jakovic keep up with Grant on the run?
Well, at West Coast, Jacko is at the moment considered too slow for Chris Grant, but you'd have to try it soon, Lee, wouldn't you?
Punch down to Brown. He's kicked towards the forward pocket. Johnson beats him out of bounds. Just in front of the cricketers' dressing room here at the MCG. 21-point lead to the Bulldogs. Brett Heady's come back from the rooms to sit on the bench, but we won't be seeing him back on the field for the rest of the day.
And Ramiro off and Scott on very high possession getters. They're obviously trying to keep them fresh because certainly their form's been good enough that he's still on.
Rowan Smith hooked it. Away to the right and through for a minor score. Smith's kick 1 goal 1. Set up Minton Connell. Just under 7 minutes remaining to half-time here at the MCG. And the Bulldogs' brilliant start when they were 5 straight is now back to 7 goals 5. And the Eagles are in touch. They trailed by 22 points, but they were blitzed in the first 15 minutes. Run out of defence by Schofield. Up towards half forward. Matera couldn't take the mark. And Albula.
Liberatore at the base of all of that.
Very hard to work out Liberatore's speed, isn't it? I mean, because he's got the short legs, he doesn't look like he's running quick, but
he looks
maybe
busy.
He's not a quick 100-metre runner, but he's certainly got a pretty quick 20 metres in him. Both those players, I think, probably of that ilk, aren't they? They've just got a little bit of a burst of acceleration. Maybe not 100-metre sprinters.
Margin 22 points. Ball slaps it wide. Wirra on his knees to West. Arches the back, gets away. Hand passes out wide, close to the boundary line. Scott West has got it. In goes Mark West to Shepherd, and eventually the ball spills across the boundary line and will be thrown in. Scotty West, 12 possessions. The season's high 34 against Sydney in round 20. Wine slaps it down. Liberatore adds to those stats. He kicks it down towards half forward. Grant in front, tackled by McIntosh. Ball jarred loose. Grant and McIntosh butter up again. Well done by McIntosh, crawling over Grant to get to the footy. The bounce inside the centre square.
One thing I've been really keen on this year, John, with the umpiring is allowing the packs to sort themselves out, giving them a bit more time before they call the ball up. I think it's been a terrific innovation.
Yeah, and the other important thing is they do wait until the ball is actually trapped, because sometimes they've called it when the ball's been knocked through.
Banfield wins the kick inside the 50. Darcy gets back, marks 50.
Yep.
Against Buster, 50 metres.
Surprising that players think they can get away with that. I mean, the marking contest is over. Luke Darcy has taken the mark. There's no need for anybody to make contact with him. Suddenly, boom, we knock him to the ground. It's got to be a 50 every time. There's no discretion for the umpire to ignore that. They're given a clear instruction to pay it.
Uncontrolled aggression, John. I think sometimes players want to be aggressive because they want to get into the game, but when it's uncontrolled, well, it all it does is cost you 50 metres.
That's right.
Umpire having a word with Chris Lewis. Well, he didn't put Wirra down. Wirra took the best dive you've ever seen in a swimming pool. Here's Darcy from near the centre circle. It wasn't much of a 50 they paid him. Montgomery in the pack, goes up again. Liberatore's come forward. Socket off the ground by Schofield. Jakovic. He's after it again, Glenn Jakovic. Garlick did well. Curley. Gee, there's some pressure now.
Pushing the back by Drew.
Free kick to Scott West, who was benched for a little time, but he's coming up for his 13th possession now. Minton Connell. Almost came off his boot, a la Mark Taylor. He couldn't quite complete it like the Aussie cricket skipper. Hudson. Good hand pass to Brown going past. Deep in the pocket. Grant. Good mark.
It was a good mark. It was interesting when that ball finally went over towards the boundary line. There was 4 Bulldogs players to 1 Eagles. That's what hard running is all about. Getting over there to make sure you outnumber the opposition at the contest. Let's have a look at this. You just see, all we'll see is Bulldogs players and 1 player there, Stone, trying to lay the tackle, but supporting Bulldogs runners, and then just a nice kick out in front of the leading Grant.
And Lee, that was a structured setup there, because the Bulldogs runner, Chris Burton, was out only moments before, telling Chris Grant to go deeper into the forward line and work out of the goal square for the latter part of this quarter.
So this time it's not distance his problem, it's accuracy. He's going for his 3rd this quarter. Oh, it looks good. How about that?
A very skillful kick from that position on the ground.
Very good kick. Yeah, he's got the radar working today, Chris Grant, no doubt about that. He's actually been fairly inaccurate this year by his standards, because he looks like it should be a good kick. But I just reckon today when he's had a kick for goal, he's actually just straightened up a little bit. He just looks like his shoulders aren't as hunched, and he's just much freer. Beautiful shot of the ball going through.
Brendan Fuster, after that last indiscretion on the bench. We'll talk about Wayne Carey being the Michael Jackson of the, not the Michael Jackson, the Michael Jordan of the AFL. Well, obviously Chris Grant showing there's a 3 in his number as well, and he's been terrific today. He's been at 3 goals as well as the ball goes out towards Curley. Bad analogy initially. Curley from 60 metres, centering kick. Going back, Darcy does brilliantly.
Yes, and I guess one has to, we showed some stats before. He's had 10 possessions already, Darcy, of course, playing one-on-one on Jakovic. And this, I think from the Eagles' future point of view, certainly had the knee injuries, we know, Glenn Jakovic, but just at the moment, even a big ruckman forward like Darcy is in fact probably running him around a little bit and having trouble, Jakovic, staying with even a player with Darcy's running abilities. Which I guess is exactly why he's not on Chris Grant, as Adrian Barrich suggested.
This to extend the margin out to 34 points. Darcy pulls it way right and behind.
Aren't they interchanging the blokes with high possessions? Johnson off the ground with 12 touches. So they've had Rowan Smith, Johnson, Scott West. The kick in. Darcy contests pretty well. McIntosh knocks it back into the pack. Darcy somehow boot the ball. Simmons. Sun breaks out at the MCG. Gehrig worked to the front but couldn't mark. Metropolis, good hand pass to Lewis. 48 metres out, Chris Lewis, but put under enough pressure to put him offline.
That's exactly what happened, Drew. Brad Drew, a fantastic chase. If he hadn't got his hand on Lewis, I fancied Lewis may have been able to finish that one, but the pressure from behind makes him overstride. Probably just the hand on the back just affects his balance over the ball. Terrific chasing tackle.
Cameron got it to Garlick. Takes the boundary line on the bounce. Waterman close to that boundary line. Hand passes up in the air. It takes an eagle bounce and goes across.
Dennis, the weather here is incredible, isn't it? The sun is beaming.
It's
and
Melbourne,
the lights are on.
Barra.
And the lights are on.
It's Melbourne.
One day perfect the next. That's Melbourne weather.
Magnificent.
It was raining seconds ago.
That's an interesting situation. He's a 10 to Grant and 3 goals, 6 possessions to McIntosh. So Grant on top in that duel.
Waterman to Schofield. Looping hand pass releases Stone. Stone kicks inside the 50. Gardner stumbling down there, leads back in the race initially. Croft judged it well, comes away, that's ambitious, left it behind, picked up by Philip Matera, scoots away, still he's going, Philip Matera. He's about 40 metres out from goal, he pulls it back, it wanders to the right, and through for a minor score. Well, players at both sides making errors there.
Yes, that oval ball on the firm surface, it does bounce all different angles. I guess that's the thing that makes the game its most unpredictable.
27-point lead to the Western Bulldogs. It was 23 at quarter time. Mark West hand pass, knocked down by Gehrig. But West follows up, finds Cretiuk, kick to centre wing. Martin on the ground with fresh legs. Garlick goes for the boundary line.
And Drew, that's the thing about the fresh legs. For the Bulldogs at the moment, Johnson, Montgomery and Ramiro all filling up the petrol tanks for the second half.
So you get a dozen touches and that earns you a rest. Winded ball comes down to West.
It's interesting, you've got to take a 4-quarter approach at times. It's interesting, I guess we saw the Melbourne Crows game yesterday where White and Steins interchanged it off the bench, and it keeps, that ruck position fresh, and I guess that's what Terry Wallace is doing, making sure his midfielders are all able to run out a strong 4 quarters.
Well, they have started brilliantly many times this season, but have been overtaken, so we've got to finish off. Lewis. Standing start, kick to the forward line. Juggled by Gardner. Cretiuk concedes it behind.
Just from going into the game, we spoke of just possibly Liberatore would take Cousins, but of course Simon Garlick got the job, and that's been a good duel. Garlick's had 10 possessions and Cousins has only had 12, so just at the moment, one has to say that's working okay for the Bulldogs.
Hudson in the back pocket, kicking towards the outer side. Grant in front. McIntosh got a hand over the shoulder. Grant will get the free.
So the umpire obviously felt that McIntosh's prime objective wasn't necessarily to spoil, but rather to infringe on Grant, and that was why it was paid.
Grant off a step short. Liberatore, 2 great players to Cameron, a third. He's off around the outer side, close to the boundary line. Penetrating kick, beautiful kick. Minton Connell on the lead, has it about 45 metres out, 45-degree angle.
Well, of course, Leon Cameron was born as a right-foot kick, but he's had a lot of quad strains over the years, and you'll find now 90% of the time he kicks left foot. It's certainly no problems with that because he kicks brilliantly left foot. I mean, that's your 50-metre low drill pass to the leading forward. Terrific disposal.
Margin of 26 points. Peter McKenna.
Judging by the other kicks, Dennis, it has to be at the left goal post, and it just swings slightly left to right, this kick.
Simon Minton Connell from long range, as it turns out. Had plenty of club. To behind. Right on the half-time siren. He started well. Had chances in the second term to improve. Michael Malthouse realises it's going to be tough from here. The Bulldogs generally looking the better side. I suppose it's fair to say the West Coast Eagles in the opening 10 minutes or so of that second term played their best footy. There've been a couple of costly mistakes in defence. Got the Bulldogs back on track.
They just don't look like to have the scoring power, do they? I mean, 4 goals for, I guess, is a pretty average half of football. It's interesting, the inside 50s were Western Bulldogs was certainly much better that quarter. It was 16 to 10, but over the entire game, it's still only 29 Bulldogs and 26 Eagles. So they're getting the ball into that part of the game, the ground, reasonably well, but really very much struggling to score.
think we're all convinced they've got the job in front of them. You're talking the Eagles up a bit, Drew, but I don't know.
Well, yeah, Dean Kemp, one of their stars over a lot of years, 3 touches and a half of football.
Just not finding it, no. No, I guess he's one of those players that can have bad games. I mean, not as bad as that, 3 possessions in a half, but certainly they'd have to kick 10 goals in the half to win at the Eagles. That's a big ask, even assuming that the Bulldogs can't score fairly well themselves.
They need to revitalise their forward line. Any suggestions, Peter McKenna?
Well, just looking down there now, Dennis, a very tall forward line. They've moved Chris Lewis down there. He might be able to add a bit of spark. But they've got Brendan Fuster there, they've got Gehrig, they've got Ball, and they're 6'5", all of them, and it's a very static and very predictable forward line, whereas down the other end, they've got a leading full forward in Minton Connell, the Bulldogs, and they've also got Grant, who runs around a lot at half forward, so certainly forward honours, definitely with the Bulldogs.
Bit of controversy behind Peter there too.
I guess the one player, Dennis, is Mitchell White, who's been playing full back, who's played a fair bit forward and done well at various times. Hard to find another Eagles player that you can pop down there.
Yep. Start of the second half. Mark Nash has got the footy. 8-7-4-4. Bulldogs in front. Looking for a weekend off. Banfield sockers it off the ground. Cousins, who started well, inside the centre square, tugs it down towards centre half forward. Ball comes in, had it knocked away by Cameron. Waiting in front is Banfield. Unloads down towards full forward. Croft showed the judgment, dropped the mark, sliding over Montgomery. Croft falling to the ground, played it well, got it to Curley, to Brown, Brown to Wirra. Great running football by the Bulldogs. Curley towards the wing. It needed to finish with a kick. It fell short of Garlick. Cousins tries to trap it. Grant falling to the ground, keeps it going. West back towards the middle, and Johnson. Johnson accelerates, runs to 50. Bacon square, beckons, and he's missed.
Yeah, that's what you've got used to, the Johnson surge out of midfield, running to the 50-metre line. A very, very good player.
Wheels and Barra.
Well, if you want some run from the midfield, we've got Rowan Smith, Mark West, Michael Martin and Liver sitting on the interchange bench. Plenty more to come from the Bulldogs.
Yes, and we've got Phil Matera hasn't fired a shot, Josh Wooden, Daniel Metropolis, and obviously Brett Heddy, who won't take any further part in the game. In defence of Dean Kemp, he did spend a lot of the second quarter on the bench, but they are getting belted in the midfield, the Eagles, there's no doubt about that.
Kemp just got another touch up to Gardner, and now Simmons at centre wing. Wine gives chase, kick by Simmons. Waterman at full stretch, couldn't take the mark. Darcy, gone well. Off Waterman, ball out of bounds, throw in.
I was going to say, Matthew didn't haven't noticed him much, but I think he might have just come onto the field. No wonder we haven't noticed him much.
Well, it really is a 22-man game these days.
It certainly is, isn't it? Yes, the spreading the load is becoming more and more important for players to run the game out, or a team to run the game out hard.
Romero to Johnson, close to the boundary line and out of bounds, right in the middle of the interchange gate. There's Brett Montgomery, who, interesting to see photos of him in the press during the week, shaking hands with the Queen when he was a cricketer. He went over to England, made 80, retired in front of the Queen. No, I didn't realise he was a former Victorian under-19s cricket captain. Not a bad footballer, having come from the old V of A. This will be a ball up, down towards half forward. Metropolis hasn't seen too much action, hasn't seen much of the ball. He's been given one handball by us. Wine, clean possession. Centres the ball. Collinuk hard at it. Hand pass went behind Hudson. Kemp getting in there hard. It comes to Hudson. His hand pass, the whistle. Be a free kick to the Eagles
Hasn't
here.
been a signal given, so I can't tell you what it was for, Drew.
No, I didn't see it. Banfield.
No signal given by the umpire.
Banfield right half back, plays on. Doesn't get onto the kick. It wobbles up towards half forward. Gehrig had it knocked away. This is Lewis. Morrison right on the wing then. Gardner wants it in short. Well, Wine put his hands up and the ball hit him. He goes after it, coming in the opposite direction. Another big man in Darcy, who played it pretty cagily there, dropped it onto the boot and found the boundary line about 5 metres further afield.
Well, if that had been Darryl White, he would have taken the mark, because he takes marks when he's looking the other way.
Like a scarecrow, wasn't he? It just was there. So boundary throw in, down towards right half forward. Wind and ball, Lockhorns, it falls behind. Simmons stops it effectively. Nicely done. Feeds Lewis. Lewis into Mines. As a result, the hand pass not particularly good. Schofield about 60 metres out. thought about hand passing to umpire Nash. Now he hand passes inside the 50 instead. It comes back towards Braun. Right on the boundary, this is Lewis. Can he thread the needle? I tell you what, he went pretty close. Slides it across the face. Off hands are behind.
In this situation, the kick-ins, 30 players will be involved really within a kick of the ball. Certainly everyone pushing upfield.
Yes, there's only 6 players forward of the centre circle.
Yeah, when we name teams with 6 forwards, forget about that most games, Drew. I reckon today I would say the Bulldogs are playing 3 forwards, Grant, Minton, Connell and Colin. Every other player is just up as a midfield runner.
Excellent mark, dragged down by Chad Morrison. 27 the margin. Kick by Morrison, inside centre half forward. Gehrig from the back. Oh, Waterman, well played. This will be a goal. Offline and through for a minor score. Would have been some sort of goal had that gone through.
Well, they're pushing forward, aren't they? They just desperately need this last goal because players will congregate up the Eagles' end while the ball's up there. And when they finally win it off half-back, the Bulldogs, they're going to be on the surge. And sometimes that's the way that most of the goals are kicked.
In 5 minutes of the third quarter, no goals, 2 behinds to the Eagles and 1 to the Bulldogs. Not a bad day for a pie. Bit cool here in Melbourne. Lights on. Gardner, good mark. Back to Morrison. Whistle's gone and something off the ball.
Free kick downfield, no?
No. The free kick is either paid where the infringement occurred or where the ball was at the time, and obviously the infringement occurred just slightly forward of the ball, so that's where it's taken.
So Nick Stone takes the free kick. This is 40 metres out. A push by Croft, a free kick to Fuster.
And no doubt at all about that one, Drew. I mean, Croft probably a bit upset because he only did it with his shoulder, but you can certainly still put somebody out of the contest with the shoulder, and Fuster certainly bundled out of that and unable to contest that mark.
Well, he looked a bit guilty when he couldn't get the hands up in time to take the mark.
That's right.
Listen, when a player jumps for the mark, it only needs slight pressure in the back to send him sprawling.
That's right.
Fuster from 50, good kick. First goal of the second half.
Well, I guess this is really where the Eagles' challenge has to come. They certainly were trailing by an uncomfortable margin at half-time, and just there, as he left the ground, Croft leaned on his back. I don't even know whether you classify it as a
better
push.
angle here.
Yeah, left forearm.
Yeah, left forearm, no doubt at all. And then finish it off with a good goal, so very well done by Fuster.
Margin back to 20 points, and the way the Bulldogs started, you'd reckon by this stage of the third quarter it might have been about 80. So the Eagles are chipping away here. It comes to Garlick. Colin in front of Kemp. Minton Connell's one out. White's got his back to the play, just on Minton Connell. The kick in that direction, beautiful! Well, whatever Mitchell White could do wasn't enough.
They kept the space beautifully then, the Bulldogs, and Montgomery charged back into where Minton Connell led to, but then just kept going out of the line, and all the other Bulldogs players stayed up around the 50-metre mark. So when he went, it was second three. Bork eventually found the space, and you saw Montgomery just in the foreground, just getting out of the way, and they just held that space beautifully, Macca.
I just wonder if McIntosh could go back to fullback because he's got the pace to go with the guy on the lead. He's proved that time and again in the past.
Minton Connell for his third. And the Dogs were in need of that when the margin got back to 20.
Yes, well, certainly the Eagles' surge was on, no doubt about that. That's when they had to make their move. And I think what we see here, I see we can't quite see it on the screen. We can see how eventually Minton Connell leads to the space. What we can't see is ahead of Minton Connell, the Bulldogs players stayed upfield, and that's a terrific angle of the kick, which didn't give the goal umpire too many problems, straight over his head.
Wind and Gardner.
Yeah,
Gardner taken across the shoulder.
Yep, exactly right, Dennis. Wine just made contact with his right arm over Gardner's shoulder.
62 to 36. Gardner unloads from inside the centre square. Long probing kick. Ball hit the pack hard. Waiting behind Cameron. This is Brown. Forward left half back. Chips it up towards the wing. Scotty Wine dropped it. Jakovic arrives quickly. Slaps it out. Taken by Kemp. Kemp quickly away. Simmons. Advantage was paid. Simmons 55 metres out. Goes for goal. Lewis goes back. Got his fingertips to it. In the pocket, Fuster. He's booted 2 already. Pulls it back towards the kick-off line. Lewis worked in front. Nicely done. Strong tackle by Curley. Got him down. Croft a great tackle. That's got to be holding the ball.
Everybody stopped. I mean, the tackle was by one arm. It should have been holding the ball or incorrect disposal, but not paid.
Montgomery to Johnson, who bounces it around the outer side. The crowd will not be happy.
It wasn't unusual, wasn't it, John? All the players stopped just assuming there was going to be a free kick.
All the players certainly thought, here we see the tackle by Croft. Certainly, that's incorrect disposal and should have been paid as a free kick. And we see everybody stops waiting for it. But the whistle didn't go.
That was Darren Goldspink in charge. You'd reckon he'd get it.
Romero falling to the ground. West likewise. Montgomery. Very high ball. It floats towards the wing. Bounces just inside the boundary line. Stone goes across with it.
I wouldn't have thought it was such an obvious free kick the players would stop, though. I mean, it may have been a holding the ball potentially, but gee, you don't see, the players as if there might have been a whistle in the crowd or something.
They certainly stopped as if it was obvious, didn't they, Lee?
Amazing.
Gardner, a fist on this one. Gains about 15 metres. It trickles out of bounds once more.
Lee, that move you've called for has happened. Ashley McIntosh has gone back onto Minton Connell, and Fraser Gehrig's been moved back onto Grant, as we thought may be the option.
Lee, is there just a chance you could be the best fullback in the league, but can't quite cut it at centre half-back?
Yeah, very much so, I think.
Kemp to the goal square. Fuster got in good position. Front and square rover needed by the Eagles. It's back out near the 50. Oh, good tackling by Montgomery. Lewis has been a pretty good player for the Eagles. Back he goes.
Still on outside the boundary line, Drew, between Montgomery. It's getting ugly out there, so a bit to contend with.
Romero clears from half-back. There's 4 players involved, just over the boundary line. We'll watch the footy. Dent kicks inside the 50. Minton Connell charges at it. It goes past him. Colin tripped. Now, that could be a report.
More than a 50-metre penalty, John.
So, a deliberate trip by foot involves a 50-metre penalty and a report, as well as the free kick. So, obviously, and the reason for that is because player safety becomes involved if there's a boot indiscriminately put out. That's the blue we called outside the 50-metre line when Montgomery laid that tackle, or that tackle was laid. That went on for some time, and other players joined the party as the footy continued.
What we didn't quite see, of course, was the turnover at half-back. Wasn't it critical when Romero intercepted the ball and all of a sudden the surge out of half-back, and I guess he was almost off Colin-Yook. It was an instinctive, as is those deliberate trips. They're just instinctive. A player can't lay the tackle, so he instinctively throws out an arm or a leg. And the Colin-Yook goal will follow.
No problem.
And Lee, the reason the umpires are told that the trip by foot involves the report is, as I said, it involves player safety.
Yeah.
You know, if you trip a player by hand, then obviously here we see the trip again. There it goes, the foot out. So
pretty obvious one, that one.
Yeah, that's right. Here we see a different angle, and both of them make it pretty clear cut. I mean, I
think it was Paul Deere, wasn't it, a number of years ago, broke his leg.
Broke his leg at Waverley.
I'm not sure whether he instituted or the other way around, but
yeah. That just has to involve a report.
Well, Reed's had a terrific first season, but he has been reported and suspended earlier this year, so he's in the book for the second time.
And that point you made before, Drew, about that trip again, that replay, that comment about McIntosh, there's a lot more running at centre-half-back than fullback. Not that McIntosh has been demolished by Grant, but certainly fullback is a very specialist position.
Romero, as a result of Wine's good work, kicks it to Colin.
Free kick.
It's going against him this time, and Reed will get the free.
And so it should. I mean, Colin-Yook just pushed Reed out of that market contest, and a correct free kick paid.
Jakovic has got it now from Reed. Look away, hand pass, very untidy. Montgomery grabs it. Colin-Yook, quite a history between these two clubs. Colin-Yook, of course, rubbed out for a couple of games after round 21 last season. Minton Connell, centering kick. Stumbling at it was Hudson. With his eye on the footy, though, he's taken the mark. just inside the attacking 50.
Well, they say brothers kick it to each other, but certainly the cousins, Minton, Connell and Hudson, they do look for each other when they got a chance.
Not exactly the Cracker brothers, but there's Hudson.
Well, there's a 50-metre kick, but you'd back that Paul Hudson will kick these, I reckon, 8 or 9 times out of 10, and we see a terrific angle. We'll be able to follow the ball off the boot.
54 goals for the season, including 5 against the Eagles in round 10. His first of the afternoon right there.
Yes, well, just when they were starting to surge, the Eagles, they got that first goal and they were starting to play okay. But then all of a sudden, 3 goals, and this look-away hand pass, this is why look-away hand passes, this half the time happens. I mean, hit the ball to the target you can see, don't hit the ball where you hope it's going to be. And this is a terrific drill pass into the centre corridor scoring area.
And didn't the two cousins celebrate after Hudson kicked his first goal? Would have been quite right if Hudson had gone through a game without kicking a goal. Comes down the middle and driven forward by Braun. Ball's hand pass, didn't quite hit the target, but good gather by Banfield. Kick smothered beautifully by Leon Cameron. Keeps his balance beautifully. How's that? Into Romero, back to Cameron. Great play by Leon Cameron. Up the centre corridor, Smith. Colin to back up. Oh, he's got a mile backwards. Back to Darcy. His kick short of half forward. Awkward bounce for Grant. Taken on the burst by Morrison. Out wide, and ball has a hectare. Can he keep it in? Back he comes to White. In between wing and half forward. Midway through the third quarter, and the Bulldogs clearly on top. Can the Eagles set up? It's 11-8 to 5-6. And defeat here for the Eagles would see them out of the competition for the season with their lowest finish this decade. Good mark by Curley.
Boy, it's his second go at league football, of course. He was at Collingwood originally, went back to West Australia and then got redrafted by the Bulldogs. In his second stint across halfback has been a very, very good player.
Todd Curley, the godson of a West Perth legend, Bill Dempsey.
Looking up the ground. Curley. High kick towards the wing. Gearing interfered with Grant. Advantage is paid behind. I think no, it'll come back.
Yeah, traffic was a little bit heavy to call advantage, so the umpire has considered it unrealistic attempt by Fraser Gehrig there. The attempt has to be realistic.
Meantime, Montgomery has been very lively, has this ball at right half forward.
And again, they're very disciplined, the Bulldogs, to keep their players up at the 50-metre mark.
McIntosh, good closing speed, knocked it away from Minton Connell. Minton Connell came back into the fray, slaps it out wide. Montgomery to Grant. He's 60 metres from goal. Spears the pass in, and Hudson's got it now. And they celebrate in the background.
Terrific play. Yeah, what they tend to do, the Bulldogs players, if they know that their direct opponent has got them manned up, they stay out at the 50-metre mark so they don't crowd up their forward area too quick. Now, that is a terrific angle of what Chris Grant saw off the boot. He just kicked it low, a drilled 30-metre pass. No defender can stop that. Paul Hudson for his 56th goal for the year.
Will it be 2 in the space of 2 minutes? He likes it off the boot. Goal umpire goes a fair way, but it's a goal.
Yes, well, goal's broken now. Terrific then by Chris Grant, who has been a very good player all day. He just was on top of Ashley McIntosh. Of course, McIntosh has gone back to full-back. Gary's come back to centre-half-back, and Grant continues to get the ball, and Hudson is now joining the party. Whenever a medium-sized forward kicks 50-plus goals, his team is going to be very good.
Peter McKenna, did that remind you of Barry Price?
Certainly did, Drew, and that's the difference in the two sides. The Eagles has had this forward structure for a couple of years. We see Benny Cousins go forward, where they just bomb it up in the air. They haven't got anyone who leads since Peter Sumich left, and they'll have to develop a better forward system in coming years.
And as a full forward, you'd lick your chops with a kick like that, wouldn't you, Pete?
Oh, magnificent, Drew. As we see Johnson going for the use of the ball, the Bulldogs is great.
Colin, taken off the ball by Reid, who's gone into the book for a deliberate trip this quarter. Cameron, support by Wirra. High ball to centre half forward. Montgomery didn't attempt the mark, flips the ball on, off the ground Smith. Unluckily for him, it's chopped off by Braun. Braun comes across the ground. Into Schofield. Jakovic pops up the hand pass. Waterman. Ball. Well, at 80 to 36, the Eagles need to rush on a few goals before three-quarter time. Just under 8 minutes left. Gardner went forward. Should have taken the mark. He's got Chris Lewis inside the 50. Kick smothered by Dent. Play on, says the umpire. Darcy. Back to Dent. Round the corner to Croft. Everything's going well.
He plays on immediately. Kicks down towards half forward. Minton Connell flying there. Morrison slips it away. Advantage is played. It was going to be a free to Morrison. Reid storming up the ground. He runs to the 50. Likes his chances from here. Long kick down towards full forward. Fuster. Crediuk knocked it away though. Had support on the ground. Brown. Quick rebound opportunity around the outer side for the Bulldogs. Johnson runs onto the loose ball. He wants a leader towards him. Eventually chips in short. Ramiro. His 19th possession. Cameron towards half forward. Clinical. That was clinical football. And Grant's got it about 55 metres out from goal. Well, they've got all the time in the world now, issuing instructions as they carry the ball.
Wasn't that confidence?
And waiting for the lead. This time the Eagles players have got back a bit quicker.
Montgomery on the lead, deep to the pocket.
That's, at least from the Eagles' point of view, that's where the league has to go to, because this is still a fairly difficult shot. Certainly kickable, but again, they've just been a little bit lax in their manning up of Bulldogs players pushing into that forward 50, and Leon come. Now, will he kick this left or right foot? This is the decision. Again, I repeat, he was born as a right foot kick, but I'm sure he now prefers to kick left foot. Seeing it slightly left foot in, I reckon he's thinking in his mind, which foot will I kick it with?
Well, he played his 100th game against the Eagles in Perth. The Bulldogs won that game. He rates that his most memorable match, but who knows what lies ahead. He's short. Stone goes up and knocks it across the line.
It seems that Porter mentioned before that Paul Hudson has kicked 56 goals for the year. They'll play another game, so he might get close to 60. And if you can get a non-key position player, anyone who doesn't play full forward or centre half forward, not a marking player, to kick 60-odd goals, almost inevitably that side will be right up near the top of the ladder.
And they've had a spread of goal kickers. They've had 7 who've kicked 20 or more, as against the Eagles, who had 4.
Margin is 45 points. Kick to midfield, ball was up high. Taken high was Grant. Plays on West, over the shoulder. Brown leads in the race, feeds it back. Nicely done. Wirra hurriedly floats it down towards the attacking 50. Down went Reid. Over the top was Collinhook, arriving quickly as Grant, pinned against the line, looks back towards the middle, now goes towards the kick-off line. He assessed it brilliantly. Minton Connell thought about the hand pass over the top. That would be silly. He'll take the kick from about 8 metres out. Well, they say champions have more time no matter what the sport. And Grant, against the boundary line, just weighed up the options, as they say.
That forward finishing has just been fantastic. Which is West Coast Eagles 36 times in their 50 for 11 scoring shots. The Bulldogs a little less, 34, but for 21 scoring shots. Their efficiency close to goal is just fantastic.
Minton Connell going at his 4th, I think from memory, all at this end. Kicks and gets it.
Yep, 2 in the first, 2 in the third.
Yes, a fantastic, and hasn't he started to break clear now, Chris Grant? All of a sudden he's starting to get a lot of the ball. That was his 4th kick for the quarter, 6th possession. And there's just that hole in front of the goal, and Minton Connell went into it.
Mark West looking to come on. Libera's on the bench. He's going for a run round the boundary line, saying to the coach, I'm ready. 13-9 to 5-6 And the Bulldogs going on with the business. They started brilliantly, kicked the first 5 goals, and then were reeled in, and it got to a 20-point margin earlier this quarter, but they've kicked away since then.
Drew, the Bulldogs are absolutely on fire at ground level. No good news for West Coast down here. Phil Matera is on one leg and unlikely to play any longer. Obviously, Reed's been reported. And I think Chris Lewis is probably the only Eagle who's really having a crack.
Grant, the ball bounces away from him to Hudson. Hudson puts it out in front of Garlick. Well done, Garlick. Speedy Gonzalez. Romero concedes some ground. Colin on the 50. Here's Garlick, who followed up. Pre-season trade from the Sydney Swans, and what a season Simon Garlick has had for the Bulldogs.
Well, I think they probably would have been happy pre-game if Garlick got nil possessions and Cousins got nil possessions, but more than that, Garlick's got a bit, I should say Cousins has got a bit of it, but this is his 15th disposal, Garlick, so certainly just as a player, forget the pre-game expectations, he's done just as well as Ben Cousins, so that becomes a win for the Bulldogs tactically.
Distance not a problem. And he's got the accuracy.
Yes, the scoreboard is really ticking now. 6 goals for the quarter. They've broken the game completely apart. And again, that ability to chip the ball short in the 50-metre area. A lot of pressure there. The players choosing the correct option to give a set shot to a better place teammate.
Bulldogs in total control now, approaching three-quarter time. Gardner and Darcy. Run by Gardner, Cousins, Banfield, back to Cousins. Cousins, forward of the wing, kicks inside the 50. Back goes Metropolis almost. Off his fingertips though to Smith. Smith breaks away to the outer side and Garlick tracking it up towards the wing. Hudson could be the next piece of the puzzle. It goes in his direction but wide. Across comes Stone. Good tackle laid there by Hudson. Takes him across the line. Boundary throw in.
And again, we've talked a few times about this. They're absolutely controlling the air at the extremities of the ground in the forward 50-metre areas as we see this tackle being laid and the ball up following that in the air. 31 marks to 12 in the Bulldogs' favour in their forward defensive 50-metre areas.
Hudson's got the footy anyway. Kicks down towards the pocket. Fraser Gehrig's in front. Started on the forward line. Now in defence to Reed. He's tried hard. Runs it up towards half-back. Has some toe. Sweeping hand pass towards the middle. Wooden, whoops. Bounced off his head. Still Wooden. Plays it back to Waterman.
Wooden head.
Waterman to Gardner. Gardner has one bounce. Lopes down the grandstand side, our broadcast side. Kicks to the pocket. Metropolis missed it. Picked up by Smith. They'll tidy up again. Gets it to Darcy, who's been very good. Comes back to Credior. To Smith. They can do much as they like down there. 3 of them. Eventually, Smith steps away, kicks to the opposite pocket. The goals are dispersed, and of course, they need goals, not goals, the West Coast Eagles. Here's Dent around the outer side, kicking it high through the wing. Battle of the bodies. Grant in front, knocked away by McIntosh. Roving the pack is Cameron. Cameron runs to 70 out from goal. How will this bounce? On its point, it wanders down towards the pocket. The balance is shown by Hudson. Hudson can almost smell a goal down there. Has to settle for the whiff of wood.
And that really started with the defensive composure of Rowan Smith, because when he started in a defensive 50, there was no one really forward to kick it to, so he changed direction as we saw Paul Hudson eventually kick the behind, and they had to work the ball out of defence, the Bulldogs, but once they got it off half-back through midfield and Cameron carried it forward, all the space was in their forward 50 and it was one-on-one contest all the way through.
A massive 58 points the margin after the Eagles narrowed it to 20 earlier this quarter. McIntosh clears from centre half-back. Jakovic.
The whistle went up and down again.
Hasn't been his day. Smith, what a day he's had. To Wine.
I think the arm was lost under the dreadlocks.
Looked like clear contact above the shoulder and should have been paid, but no response.
Scott Wind. He's got Darcy on the 50. Darcy and Grant on the 50. Chris Grant, the roving. Just beats him out of bounds. Chris Grant, 3 goals in the second quarter.
And I was just going to say, Wheels, I think you're probably going to say, was it that Paul Hudson's been interchanged after kicking a couple of goals and having 5 possessions in this third quarter?
They just keep spinning it around, but he's straight on the phone there. They're setting things up well.
Here's Chris Grant, keeps it low, but offline. McIntosh, happy to see it go over for a point.
Lee, you've mentioned how we need to coach through the game, but the other thing that Terry Wallace has to do is coach through the series as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot more football to go yet throughout this campaign for the Bulldogs, so he is managing his plays extremely well.
McIntosh boots it into the pocket. Gehrig, Cousins, kicking it up towards the wing. Jankovic kept his eye on the ball brilliantly. Not an easy mark with Wine bearing down. He slipped initially.
It's interesting, the players have definitely been told to just put your arms in the air, but don't make any contact from the front in those marking contests.
Jankovic to Waterman to White. Wooden cruising past. White elects to kick. Not a bad effort either. Down towards the pocket. Metropolis couldn't control it. Credior's hand pass, it defeated Dent, created a problem. In goes West. Metropolis charged down by Brown. Well played. Dent slaps it towards the boundary line, and that will do.
Here they run hard, the Bulldogs players. They run from 50 to 50. Certainly when the Eagles come off half-back out towards the wing, there's a stream of Bulldogs players charging down the centre corridor from the opposite side of the field to make sure they get back into the defensive 50 when the Eagles have got control of the ball at midfield.
Jankovic went without it. Smith clears from the defensive 50. Garlick has just had a day out here at the MCG on Cousins. Cousins gets a fair bit of his jumper, slings him to the ground, pulls him off the kick. Here's Mark West. The siren goes. Well, the Bulldogs kicked the last 6 goals of that third quarter, and surely they'll get a week off and go straight to the preliminary final. Listen to the Western Bulldogs fans.
Yeah, you'd be very comfortable going to the 3/4 time break in a qualifying final.
Start of the final term in the third qualifying final. The Bulldogs win it. They get the weekend off next weekend. The Eagles win it, which seems a forlorn hope for their supporters. They'll get a home final. Saints supporters would be grinning this afternoon. This has been a good result for them. Braun hand passes to Kemp. Kemp on the wing, chips it down towards half forward, controlled by Cousins, feeds it back towards the middle. Braun tackled to the ground. Lewis goes through, taken front on by West. Fell on the ball as it turned out. Darcy fell on top of him and the ball up.
Interesting thing, Lee, we've so many people have said coming into the finals it's a whole new ball game, but all 4 finals have gone with the seedings. Top 4 sides have won.
Well, certainly, I guess the Bulldogs and North Melbourne were clearly the best 2 teams and the top 2 teams on win-loss ratio, and they both probably end up winning quite comfortably.
Kicked by Smith from half-back to half-forward. Grant gets rid of Gehrig. Chris Grant, well played. He just took it out according to the boundary umpire, who's running his, 8th kilometre for the day. Adrian Barrett down on the boundary line.
Yes, Drew, and as Lee predicted, Mick Malthouse philosophical there and supportive of his team, not ripping into them, just actually consoling a few blokes who looked very, very disappointed. On their bench, they've only got 2 fit guys, Fuster and Heady being treated at the moment, and Libber, West, Curley and Hudson for the Bulldogs.
And when you consider Peter Matera, Guy McKenna, Chris Mainwaring, who didn't even make it in the first place, it's a long way short of their best squad. Ball out, much to the disgust of Brad Johnson, and we'll have a throw-in.
Think we'll see Mainwaring and Worsfold again, Dennis? In Eagles senior jumpers?
That's a leading question. Mainwaring said he'll go on. Worsfold has indicated he wants to go on, but that decision today, I mean, it says a fair bit, doesn't it? Left out of the team, the captain.
Possession taken by Braun. Up the ground by Kemp. Gardner puts it to the 50. Ball, a juggle, no mark. Oh, gee, he was mugged. Oh, look at the Bulldogs tackling. They lead by 10 goals, and they're tearing their skin off. Smith. Dent, well played. Bit of time now for Croft. And look how much space for Montgomery. Montgomery is taking about 10 marks. Kick towards centre wing. Perfect disposal to Johnson. He's got Romero outside. He draws a man beautifully. Romero's kick inside the 50. Minton Connell. He's put a bit of pressure on Cook. Hand pass missed Martin. Banfield's back. McIntosh straight up the centre corridor. Maybe the full back can take it all the way. He goes long to full forward. White is there, but it doesn't reach him. Croft.
Gutsy mark going back. Montgomery swings it out wide. Johnson meters in the clear. Cameron breaking for him. That's the next piece of the puzzle. Now Romero into space ahead of him. Romero right on the 50, flirts with the idea of going and holds up. Jose Romero coming up for his 23rd possession, and it favours Grant. Good mark out against the line. Chris Grant, sharp angle, thought about hand passing over the man on the mark to the square, elected not to. 59 points the difference then. Sharp angle.
Hey, Pete, you'd have a pretty good view of this, wouldn't you?
Well, it's on the other side, but Grant's looking for the short one. But isn't it ironical that there's great state of football in Western Australia that really the two Western Australian sides need key forwards badly? That's the West Coast Eagles and the Dockers. And coming from the Sunshine State over there, you wouldn't have thought so, would you?
It's a national competition, Macca.
That's
Players
true.
come from anywhere. Well, here's one of the great key forwards, Chris Grant, deep in the pocket, conjuring something. Oh, what a finish. Four goals to Chris Grant.
Yes, and I think we saw just what footy in the 90s are all about, the rebound from end to end. The Bulldogs had to maintain possession until they could get a set shot at goal. Certainly it had to be an acute angle that Grant shot from, and just was able to curl the ball left to right. But the efficiency of the foot disposals from the Bulldogs was terrific football.
Some Eagles fans there. 10th anniversary was 87 on his scarf there, but it's all been downhill really since their premiership win in 94. Since then, the Eagles have finished 6th, 5th, 6th, and this year they'll be 7th. Collingwood, their lowest finish this decade. Minton Connell, no mark, play on. Romero playing the tackle, and the crowd saying, what about the mark to Minton Connell?
I've got to say, Drew, many clubs 4 years in the finals should be quite happy at least to get that far.
There's no doubt about that.
And that's not a mark, Drew. He didn't control the footy, so all the Bulldog supporters thought so, but not the case.
Bounced by umpire Goldspink on the 50. Banfield crunches through, but lost control of the ball. Waterman out into open space to Morrison. Well, they kicked the first goal of the third quarter, but since then it's been an avalanche the other way. Comes to Crediuk, spinning out of trouble, Libba. Across the ground to Dent. Oh, good mark. He read the ball in the air better. Kicked by Dent to centre wing. Johnson works to the front and marks easily.
Romero on the burst. They're toying with the Eagles now. Romero down towards half forward. Wind. Well done by the man in front. I think it's Gehrig. Now it's Stone coming back with the flight of the ball. Across to Waterman. Waterman towards midfield. Simmons on his chest. Braun alongside the centre circle. Jakovic 55 metres from goal. 15-11 to 5-6. Since half-time, the Eagles have kicked only one goal. Here's Morrison.
See, they've pushed back hard in to block up the zones in there. The Bulldogs players, as soon as the opposition have control in midfield, I guess they're chipping it round, but they're still only going to have a shot from the 50-metre mark. But certainly the Bulldogs players, gee, they get back quickly to block up the holes in front of the opposition goal.
Jakovic will kick from just inside the 50. Interesting that Liberatore has discarded his brace today.
He's getting ready for his 10K run.
101 to 36. Jakovic with his team trailing, close to the man on the mark. Not a bad effort, just falling away to the left. Behind.
It's hard to know how to deal with the John Worsfold situation. Worsfold left out today as we look at the Bulldog bench. Dent kicking in. Could it be his last game as an Eagle? The man who a decade ago was their best and fairest. Now a free kick will go
Bulldogs
to
free
Smith.
Kick. Yep. Held in the marking contest.
He's at left half back.
And Woosha would still make teammates walk taller and opponents just tremble a bit, wouldn't he?
Well, let's speculate. If in fact it is his last game, it's not a fitting farewell for John Worsfold, one of the great Eagles of all time. But we're with West on the outer side now. West, low penetrating kick towards half forward. Minton Connell almost. McIntosh has been defiant. Gets it across to Philip Matera. 97 revolutions later, it comes to Martin. Martin, 40 metres out, has kicked the goal, I think. Yes, sirree.
Well, a liberatory tackle. They just do not get broken. Certainly Philip Matera, who actually liberatory started on. But let's have a look at the tackle. He's away with it, Matera, but you do not get away from liberatory. He just hangs on. And the advance rule, of course, was called, and Martin did the finishing. But, geez, it's a tenacious little player, is liberatory.
Liberatore has been the tackler of the competition for a decade. He's lost his crown this year mainly because of the matches he's missed, that's all. But
probably
boy,
still winning the averages, Drew.
Yeah, what a tackle that was to clearly set up the goal. Romero couldn't get boot to ball. Wind, Mark West, Minton Connell. And even McIntosh, who might be All-Australian this year, couldn't stop that.
100 points isn't out of the question here, is it?
No, it's just all the Bulldogs' way, isn't it? The Eagles have had trouble scoring all day, so their scoreboard has just basically stopped, and the Bulldogs, certainly when they get the game by the scruff of the neck, know how to actually put it on the scoreboard. And that's what they've tended to do in this second half. 8 goals already.
So Simon Minton Connell, who won a spot in the team after Cook was suspended. Minton Connell had kicked 5 goals in 6 senior games before today. This could be his 5th today in a final. Doubling his season aggregate. It's perfect.
Yes, 5 goals from the fill-in full forward. And I wonder what James Cook's thinking. He's lost his position in the team through suspension. And I guess it's always been questionable who was the best player out of Cook and Minton Connell. I think the Bulldogs have chosen it, maybe Cook in general, but certainly 5 goals today for Minton Connell has done his chances no harm whatsoever of being there. Certainly on preliminary final day he'll be there. If they go a step forward, well, there will be a big decision in the offing.
The West Coast Eagles have put a 2 goals since the 7-minute mark of the second quarter, both to Fuster. The Bulldogs 12 goals since then. An Eagle is down and hurt alongside the centre circle, maybe Braun. Meantime, the ball spills towards the outer side wing. Waterman under pressure, gets it across to Jakovic, who goes off a step and floats it down towards right half forward. Croft coming across, collides with Liberatore. Still Croft. Well played. Croft comes away from half back. Puts it up towards the wing. Cousins attacked the ball. Taken high. Advantage is paid. 70 metres from goal. White juggled attempt at the mark. I think they'll play the free kick over the shoulder.
That's exactly right, Dennis.
Charity, wasn't it?
Well, the dilemma the umpires are confronted with is whether the contact over the shoulder is coincidental with the attempt to spoil. Here we see, now is that contact over the shoulder coincidental with the attempt to spoil? I'd suggest not.
White. Angled shot at goal is good.
Yes, was no doubt, wasn't it, John, that his right arm, Crediuk, was hanging on his right shoulder.
And that is exactly what the umpires.
High, isn't it?
That is exactly what the umpires are told, Lee, as to whether the contact over the shoulder is coincidental with the attempt to spoil. And Mitchell White good enough to finish it off with a great goal from the free kick on a fairly acute angle when the Eagles desperately needed it.
Leon Cameron off the ground and on the phone, replaced by Montgomery. Well, the Bulldogs had kicked 9 unanswered goals until that goal by Mitchell White. Eagles go forward again. Rowan Smith back in the defensive 50. Comes wide with perfect disposal to Montgomery, who now has taken 11 marks.
He's playing an interesting role, Montgomery. I guess you could say he's a forward, but really what he's doing is floating into the forward line and then going back and playing as an extra defender. And at the moment, Chad Morrison's his opponent. He certainly runs hard forward when the Bulldogs get the ball, but just playing behind the ball has just read the play beautifully, almost a sweeper.
West. Minton Connell gets rid of McIntosh. Going past is Mark West. Nobody in the goal square for the Dogs. And the ball bounces out of bounds.
Drew, can I just say something about the Eagles? I think we might be witnessing a bit of an end of an era here. I mean, a proud club, plenty of character, but after this, I think there will be a determination to reinvent themselves. I'd say the club will take the view that the kids are the future, and I think it could be a bit of a sad day, as Dennis has been saying.
Boundary throw in. Gehrig about 15 metres out from goal. Schofield will come away with some time. Whoop. Took all of it. Goes back to the square. Banfield under the pump. Knocks it to Collinhook. And Collinhook snaps, and I think he's got a goal. His second. Both in the second half.
Yeah, sometimes you just want the game to end, I think, and from the Eagles' point of view, there's nothing much to achieve here, really. It's just Schofield, again, where's the ball? Boy, a lot of fumbling. Till the eventual goal comes, but really, they didn't have anyone much to kick it to. Held onto the ball a bit too long.
Well, it has been a nightmare for the Eagles today. 18 goals for the Dogs. Darcy very high, but shark by Cousins. His hand pass didn't hit a teammate. Soccer off the ground attempt, failed. Scott West gets the hand pass out to Johnson. Cousins is still giving his all. Back he comes to Jakovic. Floats the hand pass up to centre wing. Waterman goes wide. Oh, took his eyes off it. Braun goes back to Waterman. Now up towards half forward, close to the boundary line. Wooden. Liberatore on all fours. Picked out a teammate. Montgomery's been great. Well played, Smith. Dead out of defence. Open forward line. Collinhook. Oh, good mark.
Open space in front. Let's just see how the Bulldogs work this manoeuvre.
Oh, Grant. Kick didn't quite carry to him, but he's palmed the ball out. Here's Brad Johnson for a sitter. Oh, he's missed it.
Tried to make a certainty of it and pulled the kick, really. Often players running into goal from 30 metres out. The thoughts in your mind now, this should be a goal. It's got to be a goal. And just pulled the kick. Looked like Curley with an arm injury, elbow.
Well, he's got a week off before the preliminary final. And let's hope he can be back, because he hasn't missed a game this year.
One of 9 players for the Bulldogs to play every game. This is Morrison. Only 3 for the Eagles as the ball goes towards the outer side. Jakovic claims the mark, plays on now, comes back towards the middle. Simmons in the sunshine, kicking down towards half forward. Low down for Lewis, couldn't hang on. Falling to the ground, Montgomery. Liberatore taken strongly. Got the hand pass off, though. This is Dent. Still Dent, taken down by White. Crumbs come across eventually to Liberatore, who boots it up towards the wing. And Collinhook, inspired in this term, has the ball on the wing. Shadows of the grandstand, kicks in towards centre half forward. Up comes Minton Connell, slaps it across in the direction of Ramiro. Ramiro 60 metres out, pulls it back. Johnson is down there with Banfield. The numbers favour the Eagles. Gehrig, advantage will be paid. No, Banfield wants to stop. Wants to take a breather in the back pocket.
That's exactly right, Dennis. I mean, the umpire was prepared to let Drew Banfield go, but he opted to stop.
Well, in fairness, be a mercy rule in finals?
Should be, and they should have blown the siren some time ago. Ball up towards the wing. Although Banfield probably thought it out reasonably well because he was going to his right foot. He's very left-sided, so he may not have seen an advantage there. Ball up, outer side on the wing. So week 1 of the finals, West Coast and Essendon will go out. North Melbourne and the Bulldogs will get the bye. Melbourne will play St Kilda next week, and Sydney will have a home final against the Crows. There's the bounce. Fuster Only as far as West. A pair of Wests. Back to West. West from left half back. Banfield. Nice jump and mark. The defensive side of the wing. So yes, the question marks abound about the future of some of these Eagle players and the club itself. It could be lean pickings for the next few seasons. Their future lies in the hands of players like this young man, Michael Gardner, feeds it back to Banfield. Are a betting man, I would say the Dockers probably in the short term have more to offer, and that's remarkable considering where they finished on the list. Morrison comes to Banfield. Banfield through the centre square, pulls it back and finds Lewis. And of course, the Eagles have been written off a few times in their past.
And not a player back of the centre circle here. The Bulldogs players, they've just been magnificent the way they've ran from end to end. You have a look at the players in the zone in the Bulldogs defensive 50. They must have a dozen players back there, probably more, 15 players back there just zoning it up.
Lee,
they've done it all day.
That's right, there are only 3 Bulldogs players not inside the West Coast 50-metre arc.
Waterman, after a lengthy wait, decides to go for distance. Down towards full forward, they really congregate at the base of that one. Knocked away by Darcy to Brown. Brown thumps it towards the outer side. Stone gets back. He's got the ball hard against the line, chips it in short. Braun takes it and goes. He's 65 metres from goal. Pulls it back towards the middle. Marking practice. He doesn't need much practice.
Been good, hasn't he? I think it's an interesting principle. I think more and more we see sides say now that they're not as concerned about the opposition getting the ball in midfield, because you've obviously got to get a kick within scoring distance to score. And you just get your numbers back there and make sure that that's where you win the ball, and then obviously try to run it out. But certainly the Bulldogs have put that method into practice today.
Brown out of the back pocket. Ball punched to ground. Wooden. Most of the day on the bench. But he's about to have his first kick. Up short of the goal square. Sun in their eyes. With the lights on, would you believe? Crediok out of defence. Perfect. Romero cornered. Look out, Jose! I'm not sure what he was trying to do then. He's thrown the ball. It's an Eagles ball, and it'll finish up being a goal.
What was the call there? Play on, advantage, throw?
What's going on
he
here?
originally called a throw, I think, and then he allowed the advantage, and then...
How come he's...
The original free kick, I suspect, is for the throw. Here we see Jose Romero running with the footy, and the tackle comes in. And we see the tackle by the arm, the throw is paid, the advantage is paid, and then for some strange reason, 2 disposals later, we cancel the advantage and bring it back to the original free kick.
The Eagles certainly maintain possession, John.
That's right, Lee. And to go back 2 disposals is stretching the advantage rule a long, long way.
Bad news for the Eagles. Fuster coming off too.
Matera's kick. Oh, it's pretty good from the boundary line for a goal.
Just on that, Lee, what the umpires are normally told is if the player with the advantage is unable to effectively dispose of the ball, then the original free kick will then be paid. So we cancel the advantage and go back. What we saw then was the player that got it from the first player was unable to effectively dispose. So that really does stretch the advantage rule to the very limit.
I guess it was the first advantage kick was the one before it went to Jakovic.
That's
was,
right.
Taken back.
Fuster off the ground. And the problem in that last passage of play, John, is that play on and a throw look remarkably similar when the umpire's motioning.
That's right.
So they all stopped and started again and stopped again, and eventually it came back a couple of possessions. Wine goes up and slaps it down. Here's West, too easily through, running down towards half forward. These Wests. It comes across to Mark West. Montgomery, as he started the game, sneaks in behind the defence. Well, almost. McIntosh sweeping back, knocks it across the line.
Good play that. Montgomery actually started on the wing as they were about to bounce the ball. He just took off into the forward line, just hoping that the Bulldogs would get possession, which they did. And I think he's a bit upset that the pass from West missed him by a fair margin when he was a long way clear.
Matthew Croft off the ground, a generous applause. Gardner takes the mark, plays on to Gehrig. Gehrig from the wing, floats it inside the attacking 50. White fell over, it bounces pretty high. Coming through down there was Martin. It ricochets to Dent, goes to Martin. Martin tries to slip it away to Crediok. It finds the boundary instead. So a throw in He'd be happy. It's been a while. He couldn't remember.
Dennis, what a horrid day at the office for the West Coast Eagles. Brendan Fuster has hurt his left knee. I don't know how serious it is. He has had a knee reconstruction before, but a serious injury, and Hetty has a serious left knee injury as well, so just a horror day.
They will limp back to Perth tonight. Now a free kick is going to the Eagles against Liberatore for either throwing it or holding it.
For throwing it was the signal given by the umpire, Dennis. Put his hand up the wrong way initially, but then put it up the right way. That's the throw against Scotty Wind, and then, or the second one against Jose, or Liver, sorry.
Carbon
like
copy.
It's like a Bermuda Triangle down there for umpires, isn't it?
Let's just throw it to everybody.
Same bloke is going to kick the goal as a result.
West Coast have kicked 4 goals from frees. Philip Matera trying to bend it back. It stays right. Straight as a die. So behind. All the sting out of this one now, and they can plan for a fortnight's time. As Dent chips in, finds West. 122-49. Inside the last 4 minutes of the game. West around the outer side. Stone. Clever.
Nick Stone, 6 marks, 13 possessions, up to Lewis, unmarked, just outside the 50. They're giving Lewis the hoots. I think he's used to that every time he visits Melbourne. And here's Phil Matera getting a bit of the ball late in the game. Fancy.
One area of the game, sorry, Drew, where the Eagles haven't done too bad at the centre bounces. The taps are 13-9 in the Bulldogs' favour, but the clearances are only 15-13. So in the centre bounce areas, the Eagles have been pretty competitive, almost broken square.
Well, he's not happy about kicking for goal. He's looking for some movement, but I don't think there's too much from his teammates. Back on the 50 is Lewis. 71 points the margin in favour of the Bulldogs. Lewis in short, and eventually they'll find a goal kicker, Jared Schofield.
Like finding the needle in the haystack, a bit of space in your forward 50 when the set kick comes in. As the Bulldogs players get back what they've done all day, that just happened to be a really precise kick to get Schofield 10 metres closer.
So Jared Schofield for the Eagles' 8th goal. Didn't travel too well, and Wine thumps it through for a rush behind. Lee, as a coach, you have to convince your players that, yes, it is a 22-man game. There's no disgrace of being on the bench.
Well, I think so. I mean, it's getting more and more, I guess, acceptable, but certainly, I guess you only a number of years ago, well, I last coached in 95, I'm sure players go off the ground thinking they've been insulted almost going off the ground, but more and more I think teams are accepting it's just part of it to keep you fresh.
Brown involved about 4 times there to Wirra. Number 24 racing down this broadcast side. Props comes back to the middle. Ramiro took far too long. The entire city fell on top of him. Away comes Cousins. Cousins kicking towards half forward. Going back with courage as West. Game is won. And still, he was after that footy to Cameron. Cameron chips it up towards midfield, and Garlick sliding in. Makes the mark on his chest. Simon Garlick just forward of the wing.
Gee, they run with some energy, the Bulldogs. I mean, really, they're a mile in front, but players, I guess you want the ball more when you're in front just to enjoy it, but gee, they run hard to get used.
Margin is 70 points. Johnson almost the mark. It spills wide. Colin Hook just inside the attacking 50. Fell over. Got a kick in there. Darcy falling to the ground. This is Braun off his step. Puts it out of bounds on the full. So the Bulldogs will come in again.
The example of the Bulldogs running, a while ago they didn't have one player in half the field, they were all in defence. On that occasion they only had one player in half the field, they were all in attack.
Well, I guess there's one principle, isn't there? If you're more than a kick from the ball, you can't get used. You're unavailable, aren't you? You're out of the game. Not too many players stick to that principle these days.
Grant drags down a big one. Gee, he's a good player. I talked about potential for Chris Grant for a lot of his early years in football. He did kick 50 goals when he was a teenager in his first year.
Yes, worked very hard. Going for his 20-odd possessions he's had, Dennis, and going for his 5th goal.
Drafted by Michael Malthouse too, along with Leon Cameron. So would have mixed emotions, wouldn't he? Malthouse watching all of this.
And now Chris Grant's really stood up to be a superstar in the competition. Doesn't mind the angles, but out near 50 is a bother. This is 48. And he's missed it. In fact, missed everything. Out of bounds on the full.
Yes, because he was drafted very low down, something like in the 90s, I think. So he wasn't enormously rated when he was drafted, but I think he grew a lot in his late teens from a medium-sized player into a very tall.
Minton Connell gave it to Martin, but Stone has battled manfully, takes the mark on his chest. Dying seconds of the season for the West Coast Eagles. Comes to Waterman, chips it up towards the wing. They'll finish with the ball, but not much comfort. Exciting victory by the Western Bulldogs. I think most people expected it coming in. Great return for that man, Simon Minton Connell, with 5 goals. And the dream that was snuffed out in the preliminary final last season, well and truly alive. Rejection in the box there. It's been a funny season for the Eagles. A number of half chances along the way, but none of them taken. The Western Bulldogs definitely a legitimate premiership contender. No question about that as we go down to Terry.
Yeah, Chris, a great effort. The run on the side was just sensational tonight.
Oh, it was great, you know. We knew at half-time that, you know, the sides have been able to pick us back in the last few weeks. So, you know, it's a real great effort by the guys in the second half just to continue on.
How important is the week off?
Oh, it's really important. You know, it's been a long season. You know, North, watching them on Friday night, gives them a week's break, and a few guys a bit sore, and there's a few sore here as well. So, we're enjoying it.
Enjoy it, won't you? Play very, very well, mate.
Thanks, mate.
Chris Grant, 7 marks, 14 kicks, 7 hand passes, 4 goals. State captain earlier in the season, Chris Waterman, is down there with Adrian Barrage.
Well, Muddy, I guess the only way to describe it, one of those days at the office.
Yeah, it was pretty average in the end. Make all the excuses in the world for who wasn't out here in our side, but we just didn't play well. They were great.
The Bulldogs are a great running side, aren't they? They just never give up. They just 100 miles an hour.
I think one player with a lot of passion today. That's the difference.
How would you describe the year for the Eagles for all the people back home, mate?
Well, there's a lot of what-ifs this year, so many close games, but no matter how close you lose the game by, you don't get any points for it. You've just got to win them all. We had a lot of close games. If we'd have won 2 or 3 more, we could have been in the top 4. It may have been a different story, but you know, you're asking a fair bit when you want to come from 7.
Good on you, mate. All the best, and what can I say?
A lot of distance between Michael Malthouse and this man, John Worsfold. Worsfold, a proud man as we go down to Terry once again with the man who got the goals, certainly early for the Western Bulldogs, Simon Minton Connell.
Instead of that rotation forward line, I was very happy with it.
Very good. You know, 5 goals. Your kicking boot was right on, wasn't it? You got some good shots in.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. Hopefully I can keep it going.
Yeah. And when did you know you were coming in? We missed that answer just a moment ago.
Sorry, about Wednesday night, Plough gave me a call, and yeah, I was very happy, man, mate.
You're not going to let it go?
No, we also...
Good on you, Simon. Well done.
Well, so many emotions spilling over here. The Western Bulldogs certainly uplifted by their performance this afternoon. So much to look forward to. And just looking down at John Worsfold as he came off the ground, a feeling perhaps he was savouring the moment for the final time. I know that's a big thing to say, but left out of the team today. And it was a measured walk off the MCG by the West Coast Eagles skipper, a man who's known success on this ground. A couple of premierships, twice, alongside Michael Malthouse, who's lifted the trophy high. Not today. All honours to this team. Scotty West, number 7, what a season he's had. And this afternoon, busy again, 23 possessions. Certainly not one of his best days. 15 hand passes amongst the 23. His season's high 34 against Sydney in round 20. And last time the sides met, he had 28. That was back in round 10.
It was just an extremely even performance, wasn't it, by the Bulldogs midfield? It wasn't so much the dominators. Ramiro was terrific earlier. He's finished up with 20. But they would have had 8 players with that round the 20-odd possessions and that rotation that Brian Rule spoke about during the breaks. They just continually kept changing their on-ballers, that half a dozen players essentially playing that role. And they all got plenty of the ball. They all kept fresh. Most of them had a spell off the ground at some point.
that camera pans around, so many stories both on and off the field as you see the faces. They've come a long way, these Western Bulldogs, and they're gathering momentum. A week ago, they were beaten by North Melbourne in an absolute thriller on this ground. And you get the feeling it may be a race in 3. Adelaide, after yesterday, really do have to find something. Melbourne most impressive. North Melbourne, as I say, defeated these Western Bulldogs about 8 days ago. 9 days ago, if we think back. It was a Friday night game, but that game could have gone either way. It really is shaping up as a grand finish, and you've got to say too, Sydney and St Kilda showed a bit of fight last night, and the Saints may have found some form despite that loss.
But at this
The
stage
teams that scrambled in are gone.
Yeah, but at this stage of the season, a week off for North and the Bulldogs would be just worth a pot of gold, wouldn't it?
Well, if we were guaranteed a grand final, I know it's pretty tough on some of the people. We'll come back to that point in just a moment as we go down into the Bulldogs' rooms. Here's Terry Wheeler once more.
Scotty, congratulations. A great effort right from the start today.
Yeah, it was important for us to play a full match, a full 4 quarters, and it's probably something we've lacked over the last 3 or 4 weeks, even though we've had the close matches throughout the last 3 weeks. And it was a good 4-quarter effort today, and you know, we needed to have that to make sure we got in the preliminary final.
Player continued to rotate the smaller blokes in the midfield, but you didn't get a blow, mate. What's the story?
Yeah, I know Darce looked after me a few times there. We sort of rotated around a few times, and we've got a pretty good understanding between each other, so we help each other out, the big blokes.
Good on you. A week off, you're pleased with that?
Yeah, of course. It's you know, it's just like winning 2 games today. I mean, you don't have to go and battle out those semi-finals, so it's going to make a big. It's really going to help us.
Good on you. Go and enjoy, fella.
Scotty Wine. The cream is coming to the top. The Western Bulldogs winners this afternoon in the 3rd qualifying final of the MCG. 8